Check, check. Granicus mic test. December 13th, 2018. This is a test.
this is a totally different set of things requested by the county, so don't be alarmed. We've got Cortese, Cortese, Chavez, and Pastor up with you guys.
Put on the screen and speak.
Yeager and speaking. Somebody, nothing nefarious, it was just his allocation.
Ken.
Where's that mic? Exactly. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So I've been looking.
Good. Okay. So interesting. Right? Oh, it's something else. Okay. Let me go grab it.
Oh, yeah. I think this is more.
You know what? Do you want to just lay it? Or are you supposed to give it to Rhonda?
I don't know.
Hang on, I gotta get chocolate.
Okay. Well, we do when she delegates it everywhere. Okay, we'll find out. Great, thanks.
Do you want me to ask her now? She just said she didn't want to come in here. She wanted to see it.
She said she needed to print something out for Cortese. I'm just gonna put it right in.
Excuse me.
No, actually, let's go through the homeless item.
Why is that white shot? Why is that white shot?
Sorry. Where do you want it?
We'll be able to figure it out. But at least my staff just had the latest. I think he gave us his grades. And like from the review.
I'll work with you, we'll adapt and so on. We had a good meeting with San Jose yesterday and everything went smooth, just relax, we'll take care of it. What?
Yeah, because I just put him in front of. Yeah, he had. Oh, maybe I should put a poster. Okay. Yeah. There's anything more? I think he turned it on.
Vibrates.
Yeah, so the water, so they basically, or no, just putting it, fixing the
You guys sit next to me, maybe you look good.
I know.
right, we talked about putting in, because it's groundwater there, so it's not going to be percolation recharge, so we're getting so we talked about putting in some solar
How cute. They even said, say how great it is to collaborate.
but then you have to go into the
That's right. I wonder if Mr. Rogers ever used that term, collaborate. Hi, how are you? Good, good, good.
You guys know each other?
How are you doing? Yeah, you're healthy, you're well. So we're waiting for Ken.
They're moving along, like I don't. That's a good head. So the point is, moving along, get your seatbelt on. Get your seatbelt on.
And Dave? Yeah, no, I have Ken on my list. Supervisor you know, Ken said he was never coming, so yeah, we need to, okay, but Dave, so far, sorry, 3 people are, I gotta call him a jerk, that is really bad. You and Ken. So, there's only about 5 minutes late. Right, but I think
We have time.
we have a little bit of time. No, no, right, you don't have quorum yet. No. No. And we always have, and we're still supervisor election, Ellenberg. She's kind of used to it. So supervisor Ellenberg, No, sorry. No, of course I will. No, so once Dave is here, you guys have to go ahead and review report. Oh, got it. Okay. You've got a little base. Yeah, we got it. Which is actually like hearing something. Okay. And I don't know where Jeff is, but James is coming. No, you know what? Jeff is here. He was on a conference call with me. I think he was just in the parking lot. Okay, perfect. All right. But do you want me to share that with Ezra like Ellenberg now? Yeah, just like if you can do that one. Yeah, totally. Okay. All right. So Dave has asked us to start. Because he doesn't want us to be.
We can do it, we don't. We'll put it in for action. You can still do it.
Yeah.
I didn't really know. I never even knew what that thing was.
seatbelts on.
I totally am right now.
We'll be here in 10 minutes. A few. No, we'll start. We'll start. We'll just hang in there.
So,
Mike, you're in good hands. You're in all states. We'll go through it. You'll see. We'll see. Look at that. You got it? We know how to collaborate. You got breakfast and
he
lunch.
says 5 minutes.
Plus good tap water.
Oh, if we do it a little out of order, you mean?
Yeah, so if you do, you could do the pledge, opening comments,
And then come back to roll call.
and then
Okay,
come back to roll call. And that way, officially, the
got it.
portion starts there.
You only have to tell me if you. I know. Council. I'm a boatload older. What's that? I know, Kate. This is what happens when you have all type A personalities in one line. So what my colleagues are suggesting is that we go ahead and instead of do the roll call, that we do the pledge, we do introductory comments and then roll call when Jake gets here.
We'll call later. Good morning, everyone. I'm Richard Santos, Chair of Santa Clara Valley Water District. We welcome the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors. This meeting is hereby convened. And with that, we're going to start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have some personnel coming. So, Cindy, would you be so kind to lead us? Right behind you. Thank you very much. Mr. Cortese is running a little late, probably because of this great economy and the traffic. And so anyway, with that, we'd like to take the time to go around the dais there and introduce yourselves. We'll start from Director Varela and go all the way down. Introduce yourselves, please. Good morning. Good morning, John Varela, Board of Directors, District 1.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Water District. I'm Nai Xue. I'm the director for District 5.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tony Estromera. I represent District 6, which, includes District 2 and 3, I believe it is.
Richard Santos, Chair, District 3, which would be the Supervisor District 4, the City of San Jose.
And Cindy Chavez, member of the Board of Supervisors, and I represent District 2, which is downtown, southeast, and east side, San Jose.
Linda Lazat, Vice Chair. I represent District 4, which is the city of Campbell, where you're sitting here. So welcome to my home, which represents Council District 9, 10, and welcome our colleagues from the County Board of Supervisors. And it's so nice to be sitting next to my former San Jose City colleague Cindy Chavez.
Good morning, Mike Wasserman, County Supervisor, District 1, of which you are in right now.
Good morning. I'm Director Barbara Keegan. I represent District 2, and that's the central part of San Jose, downtown, Rose Garden, Willow Glen, and the southern part of the city of Santa Clara. Delighted to see my colleagues from the Board of Supervisors today.
Great. Welcome. My name is Gary Kremen. I represent District 7, which is Mountain View, Palo Alto, Los Altos Hills, Stanford, Monte Sereno, Los Gatos, and parts of Almaden Valley. So I represent lots of you.
Thank you. We're not going to take roll call now. We're going to wait for Dave, then we'll have the meeting start. There's a couple of announcements, and one sad one. With that, Vice Chair Lazat, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday, we lost a giant in Santa Clara County politics. Susie Wilson passed away yesterday afternoon. Many of you know her. She was a mentor to probably everyone on this board, in particular the women. If you decided to run for office in Santa Clara County, the question you were asked was, have you talked to Susie yet? And we all had, and that's why we're all sitting up here. So it was a really sad day yesterday. It's a sad day. We will miss her. I don't know if anybody sitting up here wanted to add something before I ask for a moment of silence.
I would just say, I think, Linda, you're 100% right that she was for women and she was for people of color before it was fashionable to do so. And if you were running for office, you really didn't have an option in terms of asking for her help. You were going to get it one way or another. The other thing I would just say for the county, she as a member of the Board of Supervisors led the way to protect the county hospital during really difficult budget times. And really when the county was making a decision as to whether or not it was going to stay in the healthcare business and what that would look like, she really led the way. And the other thing I would just say about her, besides that she could do the splits up until she was 70 years old, and she demonstrated that for me. She said, look, I'm very flexible, is that she also, in the most loving way, had no problem saying things that were uncomfortable to others. And she just did it with a level of kindness. And I'll just tell the story. I won't tell it at the board, but I'll just say this for my colleagues that are here who've known her a long time. When I was in my 20s, I worked for Ron Gonzalez when he was on the Board of Supervisors, and I was in a committee meeting, and someone made a comment about teenage births. And they said, well, look, the Latinos like to have baby showers. Honestly, that was the comment that was made. And Susie just looked at the person, and the person was trying to make the case that there was a cultural reason that we had so many teen pregnancies. And Susie just very calmly, very kindly looked and said, well, I think that's pretty unacceptable. I don't know about the rest of you. We're going to move on from that, and we're going to do some things about teen pregnancy. And I thought, just loving, kind of deflated the room, because it could have ended up being a total hairball. I mean, I know all of the staff went, that where I was sitting. But anyway, she's going to be dearly missed.
So if we could have a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for those remarks. I know she was really heavily involved with the YMWCA. We had a chance to participate. That's one of the last times I had a chance to have dialogue with her. So, thank you very much. Mr. Washington, I understand your son's engaged. You want to make an announcement?
My son got engaged. Here's some person I haven't told here.
Time to celebrate in both areas. Also, be patient with the microphones. It's not that hard. Just don't press it. We'll help you through it because it's not complicated. So we're going to go on and wait for Mr. Cortese, who should be on his way. So let me some opening remarks. With that, I'm Chair Santos and so on, and on behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors and the staff, and thank you for all joining us today. And by the way, both staffs and Michelle King and her group to prepare and get all this work done. We really thank you. It's a lot of work. We had San Jose yesterday. We'll be having Sunnyvale Monday. It's a lot of work to prepare, but our staff and chiefs and everybody chip in and do a heck of a job. So thank you very much. This joint meeting with the county has become an important annual event for us, and we are excited to have the supervisors and the county staff here to discuss topics of mutual interest to our agencies and how we can continue to partner together to benefit our communities. You know, your constituents are our constituents. This has been a year of action for the Water District priorities and focus on providing safe, clean, and reliable water, protecting our communities from flooding, and delivering projects to environmentally sensitive manner, to name a few. Just like today, I got a call at 6:45. I called Rick, the counter real quick, Mike Bigler, KCBS, hey, you're getting 20% less water. What are you guys gonna do? I said, well, we always do. Work together and continue water conservation. It's a way of life. There is no easy cuts. We just gotta continue working. The district can't do all this on our own. We are committed to working closely with county to provide best possible services to the community, because at the end of the day, it's about people we serve. I'll give you an example. We had some issues on recreation and so on. So Tony and I get on the phone, we call Cindy, say, let's sit down and let's work some stuff out. Let's get the staff together. And it's done, because we all care about recreation and water and all those things together. So I always want to say to Cindy, thank you always for being there on the phone and saying, you know what, come on down, let's talk about it. We get our staff together. Morning, Dave. Morning. Collaboration between our agencies will bring the community better service, better projects, and better use of the public's money. With that, I will turn it over for some comments from the Vice President of the Board of Supervisors, good friend and former Vice Mayor, San Jose, Cindy Shedd.
I'm still recovering from that. Well, good morning. We're really delighted to be with you, and we recognize that our partnership is meaningful, and I think the public would be surprised at how many areas our work overlaps in. And I know that the agenda is pretty meaty with a couple of issues that are going to be interesting to get both teams' feedback on. I would say just two things. One, I think we've all really appreciated the leadership that the board has taken in a number of areas, and some areas that are maybe people don't even think of as part of your purview, which we're going to talk a little bit about today as it relates to homelessness. And I also want to just say on behalf of the county how much we've appreciated the responsiveness of the both the board and you know, I think our personal relationships have, you know, held a lot of meaning for that, but also our staffs and their professional relationships that are really top of the line. And I'm really just wanted to also acknowledge that I'm excited to have Dr. Smith here, our county exec, and Miguel Marquez, our deputy county executive, and of course our county council, which, you know, we appreciate him in many, many ways. So we're glad he's here as well.
Well, thank you. With that, Madam Clerk, let's stay for the Board of Directors. Roll call.
Directors Estremera, Shua, Keegan, Kremen, Lazat, Barella, Chair Santos.
Yep.
We're all present.
Cindy, what do you say?
Hello, Supervisor Wasserman. Supervisor Cortese. Supervisor Yeager. Absent. Vice President Chavez.
Here.
And President Smidian. Absent.
All right, thank you. To have this meeting, I went and met with President Simidian. We just sat down and had a great conversation about mutual interest, and he said, let's do it. And I said, thank you very much. So with that also is that, let's go around down in the dais and introduce yourselves so the public will know who we're talking with, and we'll go over to the Water District if you don't mind. Mr. Smith, thank you.
Hello, my name is Jeff Smith. I'm the county executive.
Good morning, Miguel Marquez. I serve as the county's chief operating officer.
And I'm James Williams, the county counsel.
Thank you. Melanie?
Yes, good morning. I'm Melanie Richardson, the chief operating officer of Watersheds.
I'm Norma Camacho. Good morning. CEO of the Santa Clara Valley Water District.
And good morning, I'm Nina Hawk, the Chief Operating Officer for the Water Utility Enterprise here at the district.
Thank you all. So now I'll turn it over to our CEO, Norma Camacho. We'll talk about the first presenters and the first item. Go ahead, Norma.
Thank you, Chair. So our first item is a joint report on the status of the South San Francisco Bay Shoreline Project and shoreline recreation. And so I am bringing to the podium Rochelle Blank, who is our Water District Capital Engineering Manager, to present our presentation today. And I understand as well that we have, we'll start to move forward there.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Rochelle Blank. I'm an engineering unit manager in the Watersheds Design and Construction Division, and I'll begin the presentation on the South San Francisco Bay Shoreline Project. So the South San Francisco Bay Shoreline Project is a congressionally authorized project by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers together with the Water District and the State Coastal Conservancy. The intent of the project is to identify and recommend flood risk management and ecosystem restoration projects along the South San Francisco Bay Shoreline area for federal funding. The project is recognized as its importance in preserving the economic development potential of the region. As Santa Clara County shoreline is at risk from coastal flooding now due to extreme storm events combined with high tides, and in the future as sea levels rise. The county is among those areas in California at risk for the highest potential damages from coastal flooding. On the project, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is the federal sponsor. The Water District and Conservancy are the local non-federal sponsors. The project began in 2005 for the shoreline area located between San Francisco Creek in Palo Alto on the west side of the county and Coyote Creek in San Jose on the east side of the county. The total length of the Santa Clara County shoreline area is approximately 18 miles long. However, due to schedule and cost overruns, in 2011, the local project partners requested that the project be completed in phases. The first phase of the project selected is in the North San Jose area known as Economic Impact Area 11. The Economic Impact Area 11 project effort is being closely coordinated with the project's key stakeholders in that area, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the City of San Jose, and Santa Clara County Parks. Economic Impact Area 11 is bound on the west by the Guadalupe River Alviso Slough and on the east by Coyote Creek. It was identified as the project's first phase because of its highest potential for coastal flood damage. Up to $200 million in damage could be realized due to a coastal flood event. The damage would be to homes, businesses, the Alviso County Marina Park, and the San Jose Santa Clara Regional Wastewater Facility, a $3 billion facility that serves 1.4 of the county's 1.9 million people. Phase 1 of the shoreline project proposes to build a new flood protection levee along the existing former salt pond berms of A12, A13, A16, which is not labeled but right below Artesian Slough, and A18. It's represented by the red line, and it follows along the existing salt pond berms. It's a multi-objective project that also beyond providing the flood risk management, also provides ecosystem restoration and recreation. The total project design and construction cost is $177.2 million. This July of this year, the Corps received supplemental appropriations in the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018. Of that share, the Corps share is $73.4 million, and the local sponsor share between the Water District and Coastal Conservancy is $103.8 million. Although the Corps received the funds to fund the whole project up front, the local sponsors must reimburse the Corps in a timely manner. Otherwise, the Corps will require us to enter into a loan with interest for payback. The first flood risk management element, I'm going to describe a little bit of those details. So in this Economic Impact Area 11, there's approximately 4 miles of levees to be constructed with 2 closure or crossing structures at the Union Pacific Railroad and the City of San Jose's wastewater facilities outfall across Artesian Slough. The flood risk management elements will protect against a 1% coastal flood event, including 2.59 feet of the sea level rise projected through year 2067. It will manage risks for 2,500 residences, 3,000 commuters, 1,100 structures, and as I mentioned, the Regional Wastewater Facility, the Alviso County Parks, as well as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Don Edwards Educational Center. Ponds A9 through 15 are owned by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Pond A18 is currently owned by the City of San Jose. Together, they make up 2,900 acres of proposed tidal marsh and related habitat to be restored. Along ponds A12 and 13, you'll see a little green line, as well as along pond A18. That's proposed ecotone. In the upper right-hand corner is an ecotone and levee cross-section. Ecotone would be sloped at approximately 30 to 1, or about 300 feet out into the ponds. It would allow for migration during sea level rises of key special status species such as the harvest mouse to retreat during tidal events. It also allows buffering of the levee from wind and coastal storm events against the levee. And then the last piece is the recreation. This project would provide recreation trails along the entire levee and around the two closure structures with pedestrian bridges. It will complete what doesn't exist today, the Bay Trail access from the west side of San Jose to Coyote Creek at McCarthy Boulevard. The new recreation areas would include also viewpoints and educational signage. So this slide represents the post-project features once constructed. The yellow line are the proposed trail segments, and part of the process to restore ponds A9 through 15 are going to require breaching. So although there is a current loop trail that goes from A12, A11, A10, A9, A14, and A15 around that perimeter, during the breaches there will be no ways to cross those breaches. So the project would propose ending the trails at the little orange circles with viewing platforms, benches, and educational signage. The red area is currently existing trail systems from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that would remain. On the far right near Coyote Creek, just north of the regional wastewater facilities treatment lagoons, you'll see a yellow line that is not bound by black. That is taken on by the local sponsors to complete the connection along Coyote Creek to the existing Bay Trail at Coyote Creek and McCarthy Boulevard. The orange line that runs south, where the 880 label on the right side of the map to Milpitas, is an existing Bay Trail segment. The local sponsors, again, would pick up that segment along 237 for bikers and high commuters and complete that segment. So the local sponsors are taking on those two trail segments on our own without the core partnership. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and invite Kyle to add a couple of comments regarding this slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Larson. I'm an analyst in the Office of the County Executive. As Rochelle noted, upon completion of the project, it is anticipated that the improved trails will connect Alviso Marina County Park to the Don Edwards National Wildlife Refuge and to the larger San Francisco Bay Regional Trail Network. It is important to note, however, that in the initial phase of the project, there will be impacts to recreation in and adjacent to the Alviso Marina County Park during construction of Reach 1, and that park staff have worked with the district to identify the best approach to various related land use issues. Specifically, during 2019-2020 construction period for Reach 1, and again, that's a portion of the project area from the marina to the Union Pacific Railroad north of the marina. A segment of the Alviso Slough Trail Loop within the county park will be closed to public access, and an existing viewing platform will be temporarily removed to allow the new trail and levee to tie into the county park. Park staff is working with the district to enter into a temporary work area easement to allow the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to construct the Reach 1 improvements according to the project schedule, and the Board of Supervisors should expect to see related information to review and potentially approve in early 2019. The county currently provides a variety of educational and recreational programs at the shoreline, including the Parks Department programming described in the report, such as the Salt Marsh Safari, monthly Healthy Parks, Healthy People nature walks, park ranger-led bike rides, and family-friendly movie nights at the marina. As a complement to these existing county programs, the county administration recognizes there will be opportunities for additional events at the shoreline, including at existing facilities in and around Alviso Marina County Park, including the Don Edwards National Wildlife Refuge and an expanded San Francisco Bay Trail. Based on input received from the Hewlett Committee, the county administration recommends the eventual release of a request for information for an events promotion consultant to identify potential opportunities to provide increased public and recreational access along the shoreline, consistent with the milestones of the Shoreline Project. And with that, I'll hand it back to Rochelle to discuss the Shoreline Project schedule.
Thank you.
So the receipt of the $177 million through the supplemental disaster funds to the Corps was a little unique and comes with some implementation guidance. With that, it means that the Corps now must move dirt and build and construct this project. And they must construct and complete construction by January 2023. So the federal sponsor of the Corps is responsible for designing and constructing the project. However, the Water District, the local sponsor, is responsible for securing all the rights-of-way and permanent real estate for that Corps to move forward with construction. As well as it was agreed upon early on in this study that the Water District would be able to bring in all the dirt necessary for the Corps just to begin construction with the dirt in place. So this schedule represents this implementation guidelines to complete construction through 2023. Along the red line, there's a star. It's along the Reach 4-5 design bid build. So the Corps would progress from Reach 1, the Alvisa Marina, to the Union Pacific Railroad, then to Reach 2-3 from the Union Pacific Railroad to the Don Edwards Center close to the Artesian Slough, and then lastly with Reaches 4-5 from Artesian Slough to Coyote Creek. And there's going to be multiple phases of moving dirt. The first one is for Reach 1. And in order for us to move dirt, we need to secure all the rights-of-way, including the temporary work easement from the county. The goal is to try and have all that in place by March of 2019. The district otherwise is, and the Corps otherwise are all ready to then begin construction of the first Reach. We've got all our regulatory permits in place. As once we will prove we have the real estate, they can then let out their advertisement in March of 2019. And so all of 2019 would be kind of a dirt mobilization year. And then in 2020, early 2020, the Corps would be able to then take over and begin the construction of the first Reach. In order for them to continue this, you can kind of follow through that we do then need to secure real estate for the Reach 4-5 by late 2019, and the Corps would then let out their advertisement shortly after for 4-5, and in between obviously is 2-3. So the drivers for the schedule, the Corps schedule, is really the real estate, and we've got to maintain momentum in securing all our real estate for the Corps to be able to advertise, as well as for us to be able to bring the dirt in. Alone, this project calls for 1 million cubic yards of just levee fill and another 1 million cubic yards of ecotone. But the levee fill is an engineered fill, and it has to meet certain strict requirements and environmental conditions before it could just be placed and stockpiled out in these ponds. And alone, if we just moved the required 1,000 cubic yards a day, it could take 3 years to do so. So as you can see, this is a dirt project, and it's going to be really important for us to be able to just get that dirt mobilized and bring it in. So we're just kind of emphasizing that as well. I want to emphasize too that the Corps cannot just build the entire height of the levee all at once. This has to do with the bay mud conditions out in the ponds. They are going to build each levee in a two-year construction season. They'll build the first half, let it settle, compress the bay muds, and then come back and then the final lift the following year. I think with that, just re-emphasize the risk for Reach 1 is from Alvisa Marina to Union Pacific Railroad. We're on track to begin field delivery. We're on track right now to release a request for proposal to dirt brokers and hopefully have them on board in January to begin that dirt delivery. We do have the real estate required from the county on that. We are using our existing operation and maintenance easement with the county, as well as U.S. Fish and Wildlife has also an easement for us to be able to access their maintenance road. Next is to secure the temporary work area easement from the county by March of 2019 so that the Corps can proceed with advertising for construction. Any impacts to the schedule do impact release of the Corps to move forward with releasing the advertisement. And Reach 2-3, and we're working with the Union Pacific Railroad right now on rights-of-way to receive by September 2019 for a temporary railroad crossing to kind of ease the Corps and to be able to come into Reach 1, cross the railroad, and then work on Reaches 2-3. Any, again, deviations in that path to secure those rights-of-way will cause the Corps to schedule to take longer. and impacts our schedule. Lastly, again, Reach 4-5, Pond A18, we need to secure that pond by 2019, mainly so that we can begin stockpiling the necessary fill material there. I do want to talk about the ecotone fill a little bit. Although 1 million cubic yards of ecotone fill are necessary, the existing berms in Reaches 1 and 2, 3 will satisfy that ecotone requirement. So you will not be seeing trucks coming in through the marina for delivery of the ecotone material. It should be fully satisfied through the demolition of the existing berms of the ponds A12, 13, and A16 to fulfill that that ecotone requirement. So we only need to bring in dirt for the engineered fill. So with that, I think we're ready for questions or public comments. Nick?
We'd like to do with your permission, Cindy, just get some public comments, and then we'll have engage between the board and the supervisors together.
Yeah.
Thank you so
great.
much. Is any public comments out there? We're very flexible here. Come on up even after. We're willing to engage and educate. It's a very serious issue. We'd love it. So with that, Vice Chair Lazat from Lieutenant Coffers, who the Army Corps of Engineers worked on this, and Linda will read some information.
So Lieutenant David Coffers currently serves as the U.S. Well, I am on.
Oh, there
Here we
you
go. Currently serves as the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project manager for this project, and he was here yesterday to deliver these comments, and so I'm going to read them into the record for him. This $77.2 million project will provide flood risk mitigation for 5,500 people and 1,100 structures, which includes the community of Alviso, County Parks Marina, and the City of San Jose's wastewater treatment plant, while returning up to 2,900 acres of former salt ponds to tidal action and complete connections of the iconic Bay Trail. In July of this year, this project was allocated full federal funding through a bipartisan budget act of 2018. This provided over $17 billion in various accounts across the country. We in California have been blessed to have some of our projects receive these funds, including this project. The projects that have been selected are of national significance, and the Corps has been tasked with delivering these projects on time and on budget. In addition, it has been made clear to everyone in the Corps and our sponsors by Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, the Honorable R.D. James, who visited the project on November 27th, and I was there, and he was really specific that we must move dirt, and those districts and divisions that do not move dirt will have those funds reallocated to those districts and divisions that are capable of moving dirt. It is very, very important that we stay on schedule. We must all work together to ensure real estate is available to build on, dirt is delivered, and environmental requirements are met to deliver a high-quality project that returns value to the nation's taxpayers. In summary, we must move dirt. If not, someone else will. Everyone is watching us. Finally, it is critical for the Corps and the sponsors to be successful, as last month $500,000 was included in the Corps work plan to begin funding the next feasibility phase for the remaining shoreline areas in the county. Therefore, it is critical that we deliver on completing the first project, this project, to continue receiving federal support to protect the remaining shoreline areas in the county. End of statement.
Thank you, Linda. With that, I want to make sure everybody knows that Lieutenant Colonel Coffers has to go to Afghanistan. Right now, today, he's in Butte County restoring all that destroyed land up there and trying to get folks together in roads. So our best to him. We've had the advantage here to go over this and work with this. So with that, Vice President, let's open it up to questions.
That's a great idea. I don't know if there are comments or questions that Supervisor Cortese?
Yeah, I think at least on the county ledge files, for this meeting, it's referenced in several places. The initial referral that I made to county administration to work with the Water District to prepare a work plan for a number of potential shoreline projects, and particularly the notion of not only working with these two agencies, but with San Jose, which has land use jurisdiction relative to what we would call the waterfront. Any waterfront development, you go back and look at the history of it. It's pretty well documented in these ledge files. Chamber of Commerce, various interests from the city of San Jose, even prior to annexation, were talking about trying to maximize the entertainment potential, what I would call the true economic development potential of the area. I want to say I understand it's important, of course, especially in the context of climate change, to do the levee work. I wouldn't call it economic development work. I think what's happening is basically because we have driving industries out there that need to be protected, and of course they are part of our economic development base here for the county. We've sort of morphed the language here, into calling that work an economic development project. It's really mitigation, as far as I'm concerned. And in some cases, work that I know, as Mr. Santos knows, has been long overdue for years to prevent flooding. So flood control work that's clearly within the jurisdiction of the water district. But I guess my question is, I'm not really clear what the water district's position is, or this board's position is, on any kind of posture toward these concepts that we've talked about over the last couple of years, since 2016, at least those of us who are in office now, of trying to promote true economic development, waterfront type economic development in Alviso. And secondarily, I've never really heard a statement from the water district as to what its posture is in terms of maximizing the recreational potential of this access point, including taking full advantage of the marina. I see references to the fact that, well, there's a lot of obstacles, environmental impact. If we were to do anything to try to increase the capacity of the number of vessels that could be harbored in this location, for example, that would require dredging. Basically the conclusion I see over and over again in the reports is, well, that would be hard. That would be hard. But at the same time, in the report, we're talking about bringing in 2 million cubic yards of fill into this area under an environmental impact report, 1,000 cubic yards per day. And, I'm just an amateur. I've built a couple of things, but I'm certainly not an expert on distinguishing different types of environmental impact. But it just strikes me that when we talk about trying to maximize recreational value so the 2 million people in Santa Clara County can take full advantage of the Don Edwards Wildlife Refuge, so that children can get out there on these boat safaris, more than just on a helter-skelter basis, that the community of Alviso can really experience true economic development like Old Town in San Diego. When we talk about those things, it's, well, the environmental impact, it's too hard. And I'd like somebody to just tell me what is the water district's position? Is that what it is? It's too hard to do those things, but when the tech companies tell us and the folks that are out here trying to protect current economic interests that we need to do shoreline levees, then economic impact's not too hard. Then habitat mitigation is possible under environmental impact reports. So I'm confused. I feel like, frankly, it's a political situation. And I said this recently at one of our meetings, at one of our committee meetings. How is it that you can't permit some basic fundamental, sort of, if you will, middle income kind of recreational activities at this location because environmental impact is too severe, but in this same Bay Area region, we can build $1 billion new stadium for the Warriors right on the edge of the bay, just north of here, without environmental impact, becoming a deal breaking type of an issue. So That's what I really want to know. I just want to know if it's, if the water district and this board is, you know what, we don't want to fight that fight. We don't think economic development, recreational opportunities, educational opportunities out there are worth trying to work our way through mitigation scenarios and seeking permits. And I'd prefer that if that was just said, and that, we can go about at the county, pursuing other priorities, because, we can't do it without you. I really haven't had the opportunity, aside from going through, our administrative process and getting reports from our executive's office. Not that I don't trust those reports, but I don't think we've been in the room and had the opportunity for me to just hear from you. Where do all of you stand on that?
So let's get Mr. Crimmins, before I go to CEO, do you have a response to that? Is that what you're going to talk about? If you're not, I want to get a response from Mr. Cortese.
It would be an agreement, a strong agreement.
Okay, go ahead, and then we'll go to Norma.
Yeah. I've advocated for this, the lack of recreational activities. Our park system may have been built, our open space, for less people that are now in the county, not for 2 million people. And what I think, I'm strongly agreeing, because I think what happens is it becomes the affluent. In many areas, there are no park benches. You have to be a hiker, and there's no place to park, and it's designed for people who have bicycles only, who bike to, let's say, a Rancho San Antonio, and that's a small percent. So I think actually we do need to look at issues of class in it, and I think this is a great area to start here. I mean, I know, for example, in our new reservoir, the first reservoir we're building since 1955, we're looking at we want to have recreational activities. That's a staff direction, to be sure. In the plan, there are recreational activities. I think for here, the idea of it being too hard is not acceptable to me, so I would agree.
Thank you, Gary. So we're going to do a Norma. Don't forget, I'm going to go to Ms. Keegan. But the question for Mr. Cortese is our response to what we're doing about recreational in the Alviso area, marina, and so on. So hold on. Ms. Keegan, go right ahead.
Thank you. So I have a little bit of skin in the game, I guess, in that I'm a recreational boater, and I have sailed into the South Bay, though we don't keep our boat there. And I think one of the challenges in terms of an interest in sort of turning back the clock and returning to the way things used to be is that the dredging issue is not only expensive and requires a lot of permits, it's an ongoing expense because the silt keeps building up year after year after year. So that's the challenge, I think. I don't think that we can turn the clock back exactly, but I definitely agree that there are additional opportunities that can be created for water access, boating, kayaking, junior sailing programs, utilizing small portable sailboats, things of that nature. So I'm really supportive of that kind of option, and I also think it's an economic boost or benefit to the community. Like in San Francisco at South Beach Marina, there's bicycle and kayak renting opportunities that take place that are affordable to all segments of the community. So I think it's finding that balancing act, because I definitely think, and I've thought this way ever since I was in university and went at San Jose State and went for my first trip to Alviso, it is like the land that time forgot. It's a jewel. It's beautiful. It's this little oasis in our county and in the Bay Area. So I absolutely support the idea of doing what we can to increase recreational access. The concern I would have is at what level and kind of what makes financial and environmental, how we could make that work.
Thank you, Barbara. Norma, you want to go ahead? Hold on, please. Let's have Mr. Merritt.
That's so great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to chime in also and remind us that, we took the initiative to examine the prospects of creating a port out there in Alviso, straight out from the mouth of the bay. Unfortunately, there wasn't much support for it on the board because we felt that the city of San Jose needed to take a more active role because the economic activity that you mentioned, Supervisor. And so we try to stick within our role, and so that kind of limited us in how far we could go. We spent a lot of time on it in Washington, D.C. We found a lot of support for it. We traveled around the state, and including Stockton and other small ports in the state, and it seemed like a really good idea, both recreationally and also for economic activity. And I've always said that one of the reasons we have to maintain more recreation in our reservoirs is because we have a really very, very huge lack of recreational activity and opportunities for families in our county. And so together with the great park system that the county, in fact, has created, we could do something out there. But we feel kind of hamstrung that that's really not one of our biggest missions. So we've got to do it in collaboration, I think, with the city and with the county. But otherwise, I know that we have all been very supportive of greater recreational activities.
Thank you, Tone. I think Mr. Cortese is asking, where's the staff and where's the CEO? Where are we at on this situation? Hold that thought. Director Shua.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Norma. Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that, as my colleague said, this board already have a policy that whenever there's opportunity, we strongly support recreation or trail opportunity. It just sometimes there's a challenge that these opportunities conflict with our other mission, that environmental protection, we're the stewards of the creeks and the environment. Actually, so this is something that the board is already paying attention to it. At the board policy planning, we have a committee called Board Policy Planning Committee. We've already started studying this issue, and then in early 2019, the board, right now we propose to have the whole board study this issue, give us feedback so that we can continue working on clarifying board policy to promote a higher level of opportunity for this kind of recreation activity for the people in this county. So I just want to say this is not something we're not paying attention to it, or that we're already started looking into it. Yeah.
Thank you, Nye. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to agree with my colleagues, Director Estamera and Director Shua, with regard to this. I think the ask, or at least the suggested ask, is a little more than just recreation. It's some of the things that, as both Supervisors Chavez and Cortese know, on a city council, I was the environmental council member, and I along with my colleagues, I sort of play that role here too. And I think the environmental concerns with regard to the ongoing dredging that would be involved with regard to a port is really problematic. The other thing, as Director Estamera mentioned, is mission creep. And we're here today talking about doing something with the Army Corps to protect not only the citizens of Alviso, who are citizens of us, the county, and the city, but also if that project is successful and is looked at as a model, we take the project benefits up all the way up the bay to Palo Alto. So my concern is mission creep with regard to what we do, what our core mission is. However, having said that, I also agree that wherever we can partner, and that's the reason we had a joint meeting yesterday with the city and a joint meeting today with the county, wherever we can partner to enhance or contribute to projects that are being led by either the county or the city, that's something obviously that we will look into, because we're asked with regard to some of our levees, and other flood protection projects that we do, to always look at recreational aspects of that. And so that is something that we keep in mind. But we really have to be careful of mission creep beyond what our core responsibilities are. Thank you.
Anyone else before I ask the CEO to step in? One more time. Oh, I appreciate it. All good comments. Barbara?
Yes, and to the question, I mean, I think you heard from all of the board members where we lie on in terms of policy. We're really supportive of recreation and incorporating that as part of our projects. And I know in 2012, we did move forward or attempted to move forward with the Alviso Slough project. We worked with the regulatory agencies very, very closely to try to get that project permitted. And through that process, we did find that in that South Bay area, that the regulatory agencies, primarily BCDC, have a policy of actually prohibiting dredging in that area. And so it's not that it's difficult. Right now, we have been told from the regulatory viewpoint that it is impossible to do and be in violation of their existing policies to consider dredging in that particular area. They would potentially, through that process, we found that they would allow for it in areas like Redwood City, but not in the South Bay area. And so it is a big hurdle to overcome because it's going to take overturning or a modification of an existing BCDC policy.
Through the chair, I happen to have a seat on BCDC, and I happen to know that it's a political body, just like this board, just like the Board of Supervisors, just like the San Jose City Council. I happen to know, just to carry out a bad comparison because it's not the same kind of project, but that BCDC said that it was impossible for the Warriors to build a new stadium in San Francisco because policy prohibited that kind of work there. And the late Mayor Ed Lee called me and everybody else on the commission and said we need to change that policy. So I guess that's part of what I'm asking, a little deeper question. I'm asking politically, where is this board? Because I'm fine with going to BCDC and trying to build a coalition to overturn the policy or to make the policy consistent with what else we're doing here in the South Bay. Because I happen to know, again, I'm a little bit of an amateur. I don't serve on this board, but along my district, splitting my district with Supervisor Chavez is Lower Silver Creek. And there's been major dredging going along there. There's mallards, there's all kinds of habitat, there's burrowing owls along the edge of that. And I don't hear BCDC or the Water District or anyone else saying it's too hard, it's too expensive, or there's some policy that some political party adopted that stops us from doing that. I think what you do is you say, we need to do that dredging, otherwise we're going to have a flood control problem. And so we're going to do it. We're going to mitigate the environmental impacts. That's my
in the Bay Area, and that together with the 49er Stadium and so on, we thought would be opportunities that were missing. But then at that point, it was the chamber that then took over that effort, and so we bowed out of it. And I don't know what happened after that. But so I'd like to see us make that a formal referral to our agenda so that we can discuss it as an item, and perhaps thereafter communicate directly with the Board of Supervisors and see where we go and notice the city that we're looking at some of these opportunities again.
Well, thank you, Tony. That's just what we need to do. We have consensus here from our board members that take a look at this. Mr. Cortese has brought up several items from ECDC to name it that those are the challenges. So we agendize that, we'll discuss it and see what we can do, and then we can relay that information to the public and to the county. But again, thanks, Dave, for all the work you've done and bringing that to our attention again. It's kind of been on back burner for numerous reasons, and I think that you identified some that we can explore here to see if we can eliminate them or whatever we can do together. So any more discussion on that? I'm going to entertain a motion from the Board of Directors and then turn it over to Vice President Cindy Chavez. For the district and the county boards receive a joint report related to the South Bay San Francisco Shoreline Project, shoreline opportunities related to recreational emergency access. We need a motion from our board. There's a motion by Tone, second by Linda. All in favor? All opposed? That carries. Thank you, Vice President.
Thank you, and we're going to, I'm going to ask for a motion to receive the report relating to the South San Francisco Bay Shoreline Project and shoreline opportunities
So
related
moved.
to recreational emergency access. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Wasserman? Second. All right. All those in favor? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And one thing I forgot to do, I'm so sorry to take this out of order, but we have Susan Ellenberg here, our supervisor-elect, who's here, and I couldn't have missed it. Yeah, so we're glad you're here and appreciate you being here and I just sent a text to Supervisor Yeager asking him where he is. So.
Welcome.
But we're glad you're on the job, so thank you. That's right.
And then you have the next, item.
Oh, sorry about that. She said, get on it, Cindy. Okay, so next we're going to move to item 5. And item 5 is to, I'm going to introduce Dr. Smith, and he's going to get our staff rolling on this next item.
Thank you, Ms. Vice President. Next, we are going to have a report on the Ogier Ponds update. And with us, we have Vince Jen, who's the watershed's Chief Operating Officer for watersheds, and we also have County Parks Principal Real Estate Agent Tim Heffington to give us an update. So, I don't know, Vincent, you gonna start?
Good morning. I'm Vince Jin. Minor correction, I'm the Deputy Operating Officer for Watershed Stewardship and Planning.
I gave you a promotion, sorry.
My boss is the Chief Operating Officer of Watersheds. Good morning, Vice President Chavez, Chair Santos, members of the Board of Supervisors, and also our Board of Directors. Thank you. Our mutual staffs, respective staffs from our two organizations want to provide a brief update on a collaborative study effort that we've embarked on. For the past year and a half, staff from both the Water District and the county have been working together on a feasibility study, which has recently concluded on the Ogier Pond Complex. I'd also like to add that the leader of this effort is my colleague, Ngoc Nguyen, Deputy Operating Officer of Design and Construction, who oversaw this effort. Ngoc is unable to attend today and has asked me to present this item in his place. So I just want to recognize that all of Ngoc's effort and his staff, as well as working with the county staff. This feasibility study was really embarked on starting from March of 2016 to evaluate whether there's potential for environmental restoration, recreational opportunities, and also creek-lake separation, recognizing that the Ogier Pond Complex is the property of the county. So in that vein, we entered into an MOA to work with the county. The district's interest in Ogier Pond stems from a settlement agreement that the district entered into to resolve a water rights claim against the district. Out of that settlement agreement, the district committed to evaluate separating the creek from the lake, working with the property owner, and also keeping in mind that the property owner's mission and interest of recreation and the mutual interest of habitat enhancement. That feasibility study concluded earlier this year, and that report concluded that it was viable to separate the creek from the lake. It was also viable to enhance the habitat, and also there were recreational opportunities. The study also concluded that the opportunity for groundwater recharge and also flood protection were not really available at that location for a multitude of reasons. But it concluded that there were opportunities to move forward for environment enhancement and improving the fish passage. This creek and lake were combined in the past through some past storms, and the regulatory environment and regulatory agencies such as National Marine Fisheries have had high interest in this property because the combined creek and lake poses a fish impediment. The temperature as well as predators in the lake are affecting the endangered species, federal endangered species listed steelhead. It's listed as threatened, and so it is of high environmental interest. At this point, with the feasibility concluded, district and county staff would like to move forward with a planning study to look at opportunities to look at options for improving the facility for both recreation, habitat enhancement, and fish passage impediment remediation. So one of our actions at this point is to request authorization under the framework of a master license agreement to execute at staff level an MOA to continue with this with a planning level study to identify alternatives and provide a recommendation. We do not yet know what those studies would produce, and that's why we're embarking on this study. But we're working closely with the county staff and keenly aware that this is the county property and that the county's mission has to be considered, and all of our alternatives will be in lockstep with the county mission and goals. And at this point, I'd like to turn the floor over to our colleagues at the county staff.
Good morning, board members and executive staff. So to reiterate the partnership between the Water District and the county relative to this project, we wanted to call your attention first to the regional context. On the display, you'll see the, the map of the regional park system and the location of the Ogier site that our colleague has referred to. As further regional context for the board, we ask that you recall that in August, the agreement that my colleague referred to was approved by both boards. At that time, the board approved some founding principles that speak to the shared goals and the common service populations of our two agencies. Excuse me. Consistent with the principles, we have shared responsibility for the watershed stewardship and for provision of recreational services in combination with that stewardship. So the feasibility study that my colleague referred to made the conclusions and recommended that we proceed with this planning study. Under the master license agreement, we will now implement a memorandum of agreement to pursue that planning study. And as outlined in the staff report and in the feasibility study conclusion, there are some remaining questions that we hope to clarify as we embark upon the planning study. The first question is the long-term expectations for mitigation. If there's a need for compensatory mitigation, there will likely be an associated need for a land use or a land entitlement conveyance from the county to the district for compensatory mitigation. In the planning study, we hope to clarify the land cover type, the acreage, and the specific location of that area that is needed for compensatory mitigation. Likewise, we expect the planning study will fully integrate components of the county's master plan for that site, the future recreational components, and back to the regional context of your monitor, the continued connectivity of the Coyote Creek Trail that spans this property. And in the end, as outlined in the staff report, the department does not currently have fiscal resources to substantially contribute to the outcome that was outlined in the feasibility study. There is a range of $12 to $52 million for anticipated costs for project implementation. So without making sacrifices elsewhere, the department would not have financial resources to pursue the actual project implementation. However, we stand poised ready to work with our colleagues and to pursue grants. We also understand that as the planning study is concluded, there may be an opportunity to pursue legislative funding for implementing such a project. So in closing, we ask that the board accept our report and acknowledge that we will be moving forward with an MOA to pursue these issues, but that the study itself will clarify expectations at the end of the study for land conveyance, for the land cover types that are necessary, and for the sources of financial resources, as well as the staff resources needed to implement the project. And with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
So first I'll go to comments from the board. Do we have any public comments on this item? Seeing none, then I'll go to comments from the board.
Mr. Varela? Thank you. First and foremost, thank you very much for the presentation. And I'm just curious of how many of the board members and supervisors have actually visited this location. In my opinion, it's one of the most beautiful areas in South County, with the biking trails and the walking trails that are right next to this. close to Coyote Golf Course. I mean, it's just an amazing, beautiful location. So in the spirit of cooperation and collaboration, I want to propose and make the recommendation that the district board consider authorizing the district staff to execute a partnership memorandum of agreement for the Osier Ponds planning study under the authority of the master license agreement between the Santa Clara Valley Water District and the Santa Clara County.
We're going to be taking that for a motion here in a while.
I just made the motion.
So.
Yeah, that's all right. You may
But
have
thank you, John. Tony?
Yeah, I'll second that emotion. I did want to express our board's very strong support for this project. As one of the fish guys on the board, this is a very important project for us. Director Keegan, Director Lazat, we're leading the effort for our board with respect to fisheries in our county, and you know we're all very dedicated to making sure that our grandkids see fish in our county. And the only way to do that is to take projects like these and make them a reality. And I understand that there may be some transportation monies and other opportunities for funding that may present themselves, but I just wanted to impress upon everyone how important this project really is, because it presents tremendous opportunities for us to bring our fisheries back in the county. It's very important for us to make the investments that are necessary to bring fish back and to make them healthy. Because like I said, you know, it doesn't happen by accident. Our grandkids aren't going to see any fish if we're not dedicated to providing that opportunity for them. And it's a sad day if we let that happen. So I did want to impress on everyone how important it is for us, and that we're going to do everything possible to assist the county, and both with funding and with everything that we need to do with these efforts. So thank you for working with us and collaborating with us. We really appreciate it. Our grandkids are going to appreciate it even more.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Wasserman.
Thank you. A little tartar sauce and a little lemon juice, huh? Through the chair, I would like to ask our Director of Parks, Mr. Don Rocha, his thoughts about what he's heard here so far today and what Parks' position is. I see the Water District making itself available for 50% of the funding. I heard from Tim as far as the concern about the county's ability as far as funding for this project. And I believe you used the term substantial amount. So I'm interested in exactly what Parks' position and thinking is at this time.
Thank you again. Don Rocha, Director with Parks and Recreation Department. We are interested in addressing osier. It is something that we identified in our natural resource and master plan for the Osier Ponds and the Coyote Creek Parkway. Again, you know, the budget constraints are limiting for us, so we are interested in seeking partnerships, both with the district as well as others, if we need to balance that opportunities for budgetary constraints and address the budgetary constraints. We've been working very closely with the district. If compensatory mitigation and others, what those other options may be, we're very interested in working with the district as well as other partners to try to address this financially. Again, with our constraints, you know, we'll have to seek other opportunities for the contribution through the park charter because of the limitations of the charter fund.
Thank you.
Director Shua.
Thank you, Chair. I want to reinforce the board's support for this fishery passage project. In addition to our commitment on the financial resource, I just want to maybe, I don't know if a supervisor is aware of this, the board actually approved 4 new positions, I think at not the last budget cycle, but the previous budget cycle, to dedicate those expertise on fishery projects. So 4 positions, I mean, for Water District our size, it's a pretty significant commitment from the board. So I just want to say that to reinforce our commitment to this kind of project.
Thank you. Director Keegan.
Thank you. I hesitate to say I'm yet another fish person here, but I'm very happy that we're meeting and talking about this. I think one of the things where sense of frustration is too strong a term. Mild concern is that we weren't sure how aware the Board of Supervisors was about this project and the importance of it. Our respective staffs do great work. At the same time, it's important to have that elected official to elected official kind of communication. And I think one of the challenges that your Parks Group has been dealing with is that this Osier Pond project is not just a recreational project. It has that component to it, but it's an environmental project as well, and there's environmental consequences if we're not able to move forward with it. So I think it's a very healthy discussion today. I think that our colleagues on the county side can understand where we're coming from, and the fact that it's not just a recreational concern to us or to you either, but there's environmental issues at play, and I think it is in the best interest of both agencies if we can figure out a way to make this happen.
Thank you, Robert. Director Lazat?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm at a loss to understand the MOU directions to staffs. I think our direction to our staff is to, we're committing the money to do the planning study. Parks has said that there's no money after that, or you're going to be looking for money. We've given direction to our staff, so I guess I'm curious with regard to my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors. With regard to your staff, is there direction to seek other funds, to look at the parks charter, to look at what requirements may be on the county? Because all we've heard from, we had park staff come to speak to us when we approved our direction to staff, and it basically was that they hadn't yet communicated with the board, and I think that's the conversation that Director Keegan hadn't yet communicated to your board what our needs were, what we were thinking, where we wanted to go. So I guess I want to hear from my colleagues at the Board of Supervisors, what is your thoughts with regard to funding, with regard to cooperation, with regard to moving this project forward?
Great. So, and Linda, offline you said something that I couldn't hear, so I don't want you to think I did hear it, about, you said we have an obligation to do something, and I didn't hear the rest of what you were saying. I think you might have, I don't know what you're referring to.
I think there's a...
Go ahead.
There's an obligation for... I think there's an obligation from the county to help clean up the Osier Ponds, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, perhaps Vincent Jin could actually elaborate on our understanding.
Thank you. My understanding is that the National Marine Fisheries Service, who considers this a fish barrier, an impediment to fish passage for a threatened species, and we've been talking with this county staff that there was a potential regulatory letter, action letter, that was directed to the county. And my understanding is that the county staff has been adjusting that letter, and I'd like to refer to the county staff on the county's response and disposition in regard to that National Marine Fisheries regulatory letter.
Great. And I don't know if that should go to Don or Tim, but you guys jump in as you see fit. And then I have some comments. I'm going to put myself in order because I can't reach that ringing bell, so I just hit Dick as I was instructed to do.
Yeah, the county, 16 years ago, the county did receive a letter. Outside counsel responded to that letter, and there's no actions that are pending.
So let me just, there's a couple things. One is I appreciated the meeting as an opportunity to learn more about Osier Ponds because this, I represent the city folk here. Having said that, I had a few questions that I wanted to make sure our staff had a chance to respond to. I'm not sure all of my questions can be responded to today, so this may require us to take this back to the board, our board, for further discussion. But let me just put them in the order of the questions that I had. One is that the extent of the challenge to the steelhead, right? Is it steelhead? Is along a whole continuum. And so one of the things that I really want to make sure that I understand is how the order in which we're addressing the environmental issues and how that makes sense relative to the needs of the fish, which I genuinely don't understand that yet. Second, I am mindful that the expense, not just of this portion, but really of the entire fix, is pretty dramatic. And so I'm also interested in a long-term funding plan that is much deeper than let's go get a grant, let's find, pieces of money to do this. I frankly don't think that is the responsibility simply of our staff, but also of our staffs collectively looking at everything from mitigation funding for...
I'm getting indications from the back of the room. They can't quite hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your microphone is a little closer.
Is that any better? All right, thank you. But anyway, what sources of funds there may be. So, for example, I know that you have significant construction projects. We know that we have a significant construction projects potentially with high-speed rail. Those are big mitigation opportunities. And so, frankly, I think I think our park charter fund is not just limited in its scope, but also that we've got projects stacked up against that already. So I really do want to look at what do we see coming down the pike. So I'm interested in understanding over the next 5 to 10 years, where do we see those mitigation opportunities, and whether or not collectively working with the Habitat Conservation Planning Group that we can take a much longer, much deeper dive into prioritization and funding. And frankly, having our two agencies have some shared vision around how those monies should be used is actually, getting us on the front lines of making sure that we can prioritize the work that we want to get prioritized. And then lastly, and this is really in some respects more for our staff, as we've been looking at, under the leadership of Supervisor Wasserman and Supervisor Cortese, our investments in South County, and it's frankly not just resources coming from you, but resources that we're looking at from the general fund, understanding how we're prioritizing these kinds of investments relative to our bigger plans for South County as well. Because I think the point that Mr. Varela raised about what the most beautiful part of South County is, I mean, you and Mike Wasserman might get into a little match about what that is. But nonetheless, the needs in the South County are significant relative to environmental work that we're doing in partnership not just with the Water District, but also the Open Space Authority and a number of other partners, including how we're looking at Coyote. So I want to better understand this because it's such a big price tag in relationship to those other projects. All right, now I'm going to let you go to Gary.
Appreciate the comment, Mr. Kremen.
Thank you, Chair. Well, is the Equity and Social Justice Focus Board member here?
Wow.
Exactly.
Instead of the fishing person.
Yes. I care about, we have to look at many things, including our rates, and that's why this needs to be prioritized in the context of other CIP projects we have. Given the high increase in our rates in the most recent years, some of the people are struggling. Not everyone in the county has benefited from what's happened in Google, let's say. So I think we need to keep it in mind. There's a lot of things we want to do, but we really got to keep that in context. People are struggling. The more we add on, the more water rates go up. So we need to look at this in context of everything else. So just like you to think about that.
Good comment, thank you. Supervisor Cortese.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to respond, to the Board Member Lazat's, request to hear from each of us. I guess I generally associate my comments with those of Supervisor Chavez, just in terms of, how to take up any kind of significant county investment. I think, having been involved with the formation of the HCP, as Supervisor Wasserman was, and all the board members were, in terms of the appropriations or prospective appropriations, there's a huge commitment there that's in the range of the upper end of what this commitment would be, if the agencies, both agencies, just jumped in and said, let's just try to do all this Osier stuff. I don't think there's enough Park Trust Fund money if you combine those two ventures. And they're two ventures that were, again, the Water District and the county have both been significantly involved in. So that's just back of the envelope calculations on my part. I do think while the study is going on, it would make an awful lot of sense for us to, at the county, to assess whether or not Prime Policy Group, our Washington lobby firm, is qualified to assist in laying the foundation to try to track down some federal grant money for this work. And I think while the study is going on, it's probably a good time to do that, pending whatever happens in the 2020 elections in terms of administrative changes. It may get easier, may not, to pull down grants, whether they be related to parks, whether they be related to flood control, or whether they just be interior department grants. So I think that's a good initial strategy. I don't think we could predict our general fund, beyond a couple years. But again, although it's a big operating fund, the upper end of the expenditures estimated here, in the $52 million range would be significant for the county, no matter what fund we were looking at. I guess significant is, I'm probably putting it a little bit mildly. It would be more like tilting the game. And it's not because of what we think is our share versus your share versus anybody else's share. It's just a matter of capacity. But I don't think we've done an exceedingly good job at the county, and that's not, I'm not pointing that at Parks or anybody else. I don't think the Board of Supervisors has really directed or been that engaged in the whole process of tracking down, significant federal grants or even state grants for this kind of work. So, and I know the Water District has its own capability in that regard, but maybe the two agencies really making a focused effort to go together, brings a little bit more firepower to that effort. And to Mr. Varela, yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly in terms of the magical nature of this, almost any time of the year, of this particular area. Through there with my youngest son a couple of times, and it's absolutely worth working on it and preserving, of course. Thank you.
Mr. Varela. So, question to the CEO. There was a reference on how the project could have an impact on rates. Can you give us a clarification as to what that would mean, and also where's the funding dollars coming from? And in reference to Supervisor Cortesi's request about finding grants, can you give us an overall view as to the funding mechanisms and how they apply to this particular project? And specifically, the comment that was made on impact to our rates.
Now, in terms of impacts to rates, the only way that it would impact our rates is if this project was considered as mitigation to one of our water utility projects. And that has not yet been determined at this point in time. Now, if it was solely to be done, let's say, as an environmental stewardship project, basically then that would impact, our 1% ad valorem tax, Fund 12. But we do have, or there is a potential obligation in face that calls this project out as a potential obligation to satisfy those requirements as well. And so there is a high propensity for this project to impact rates if we start to move forward with both Anderson and with FACE at this point in time. And now other funding, we talked about looking at grant funding and federal funding. And one thing that we can do is, combine our lobbying efforts to find some type of path out there, whether it's, let's say, there's a lot of other federal paths that we could find for grants in, sort of semi-rural areas as well, too. So we could try to find a path there. Also look at other types of funding like low-interest loans as well, too, for this type of project. And so there are a variety of ways in which we could go and work together on this, if that answers your question.
So you have a motion and a second on the floor. Did you want to take your motion
No,
first?
you go first, please.
Really? All right. I get to go first now. Thank you.
Also, you made some remarks. Does that meet your needs, that motion about finances or something?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I think our direction on our side is going to be to receive the reports that as outlined in A and B on packet page 43. And then what I'd like to do is ask staff, working with the Water District, to come back to the full board with options for financing and looking at these bigger projects for mitigation. And then also to working with the Water District, make sure that we understand the scaffolding of the project, like why Osier first versus some other component of it. And while some of that was in the staff report, I frankly didn't see I had a hard time understanding the reason for the prioritization. So that's why I'd like to ask for that. And then third would be to work with the Water District to have a shared strategy relative to grants at a federal level and state. And I would recommend that if someone could make that motion.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on our end? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously.
Thank you, Cindy. Any public comment on that out there? If you'd like to come up anytime, please come up. We have A, B, and C, and we add a C to that. Would the district consider authorizing district staff to execute the MOA for Osier Ponds planning study under the authority of master license agreement by and between the Santa Clara Valley Water District and County of Santa Clara? Hold one, please. Norma.
Yes, I'd just like to add one clarification on action number C, where it says the district board considers authorizing district staff. I would like to clarify that to say the chief executive officer, so that we know what staff is being authorized specifically.
We'll make that change.
Thank you.
Tony and Johnny, you accept that? Thank you so much. Hold one, please. Linda? We're on a roll.
Is the MOA going to come to the board before you execute it?
If this goes through, then it would not. This would allow for myself to authorize it.
Yeah, I'd like to change that to have that the MOU come to the board for approval, and then we can authorize you to execute it. I'd like to make that a friendly amendment.
Okay, hold on, please. John, Tony, Nye, Barbara, any objections to that? Go ahead, Tony. Get on the microphone, please, and let's get it clear. Mr. Varela. Director Lozada, I don't understand what you're doing.
What I'm asking is that the MOU come to us to approve. Why would we execute a major memorandum of understanding without us getting a look at it? We always get a look at it. So I'm just requesting that it come to us for approval. Just like I'm sure the MOU is going to go to the board.
Yeah.
Supervisors.
Any more comments on that, please?
No, ours isn't.
Yeah. Well, I'd like ours too.
Well, I have more discussion because my amendment is not, I'm not going to recommend change my recommendation to approve. Let me help here. Just don't press no more buttons. Norma, over here. No matter what, you'll come to the board before any agreement was made anyway.
Just to clarify then, what I'm understanding that the board would like the MOA to be agendized and approved, brought forward to the board prior to execution then.
With these motions, that's the direction part of those motions, okay?
Okay.
That will be included, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Linda, everybody. Okay, so we got a motion by Tony and John. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That carries. I do want to make a comment. You know, we kind of use a play on words sometimes, you know, Tony or somebody will say, well, you're on the fish person. Well, I want to say, make sure everybody knows here, every board member has always been very sensitive to the fish and ponds and everything. They've done a great job. I do want to give the credit where it's due, because when Tony brought this up years ago when we were going nowhere, said, hey, stop, let's do it. And this is when I made the phone call to Vice President Chavez. I said, we got staffs and people, they're all great, but there's some obstructions somehow. Can we just meet and clarify and then go back? And those are the kind of partnerships that we have and that made the difference, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good?
thank you, everybody.
Anything else? Any last parting words? Run like the wind, bullseye? Okay, good.
Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to our CEO. Norma, take it away on item 6.
Thank you, Chair. And so we have one last item, or actually the second to the last item, discussion of issues surrounding homeless along the waterways, a huge issue. And I'd like to introduce two speakers, Senior Water Resources Specialist Kristen Struve, and from the Office of Supportive Housing, our Program Manager, Hillary Baroga, and they will be both presenting this item jointly.
Good morning, directors and supervisors. My name is Kirsten Struve, and we're talking about homelessness along waterways. As you all know, the district provides water supply, flood protection, and stream stewardship, which limits our role in addressing encampments to focusing on water quality, environmental stewardship, and avoiding damage to district facilities. Our Safe Clean Water program has an important priority to reduce toxins, hazards, and contaminants in our waterways. In 2017, Santa Clara County had the third highest homeless population in the state, with over 7,000 homeless individuals, of whom 74% are unsheltered. A portion of these unsheltered homeless individuals live near creeks and urban areas. And this is a map showing hotspots for the county where we have found homeless encampments between 2012 and 2018. Our Santa Clara County waterways are unique because much of the creeks are natural and densely vegetated, creating cover for encampments and privacy, but these natural areas also provide habitat to wildlife and recreational opportunities to the public. Impacts from homeless encampments on creek health include wildlife and habitat impacts as shown in these pictures. Wildfire can be caused by arson or by campfires out of control, and can destroy habitats in the creek areas, as is tree and limb removal, which occurs for building structures as well as fueling the fires. This type of habitat destruction can significantly impact restoration and mitigation efforts. In addition, we find shopping carts and other barriers in our creeks used to poach sensitive fish species that we are charged with protecting. Trash, debris, and bio-waste are significant water quality impacts to our waterways. We find electronic waste and hazardous waste, as well as trash blocking the channels. Bank excavation can weaken our infrastructure and discharge sediment to our waterways. Excavation is done for shelter, as seen in the picture, stair building, as well as large pits. This one was used to burn garbage. Safety is becoming an increasing concern for our staff as well as volunteers. They have required police officer presence during encampment cleanups. Hazards include live ammunition, human waste, needles, aggressive dogs, and hazardous wastes. What the district does is a lot of work on addressing encampments along waterways. We conduct hundreds of encampment cleanups per year in coordination with the City of San Jose Housing Department as well as other cities, including Gilroy, and have spent $5.4 million over the last 5 years to remove over 67,000 cubic yards of materials. Our original Safe Clean Water program was budgeted for 52 cleanups per year, but as you can see, we're averaging about 400 due to requests from the public. We have an Adopt a Creek program that lets volunteers help keep our waterways clean. And we also chair the Creeks Connection Action Group, which organizes coastal cleanup and National River Cleanup Days for the county. At the last Coastal Cleanup Day, we had almost 2,000 volunteers clean over 60,000 pounds of material along 75 miles of creek countywide. We can't do this work alone, and partnerships are really important. We have partnerships addressing 3 main aspects of homelessness along waterways, including abatement and trash removal, prevention and enforcement, and engaging homeless individuals. So we have a memorandum of agreement with the City of San Jose for abatement and trash removal, where the city does all the social services, noticing, storage of belongings, and waste disposal, while we provide the crews to clean up the trash and transport the trash, biological, and hazardous wastes. We also work very closely with Gilroy on the same issues. We have a joint agreement with the City of San Jose to fund the Downtown Streets Team, who clean up trash in creeks in San Jose. The Downtown Streets Team is a nonprofit organization that addresses homelessness by having homeless volunteers pick up trash while providing necessities, including a stipend, health services, and case management. We also have grants that we provide to other Downtown Streets Team programs throughout the county, as well as the Gilroy Compassion Center and other nonprofits that focus on creek cleanups. In terms of prevention and enforcement, we have had a successful partnership with the San Jose Park Ranger program. However, due to staffing issues in that department, we do not have a current contract with them. And we also have an agreement with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and unfortunately that position is also not filled for our county due to staffing issues in that agency. And with that, I will turn it over to Hillary to talk about what the county is doing.
Thank you, Kirsten. Good morning. I'm here to talk about what the county and its partners have done to address homelessness in recent years. Whether it's because of the 2016 Measure A housing bond, the All the Way Home campaign, or the homelessness cost study, our supportive housing programs and the level of interagency cooperation have become a model for others. In the early years, our successes were the creation of Destination Home, an organization to foster and expand public-private partnerships and solutions to homelessness, and the Housing 1000 campaign, through which we housed 1,000 chronically homeless men, women, and families. Building on the success of Housing 1000, we facilitated the development of a new countywide plan to end homelessness, which was finalized in early 2015. One of the plan's key goals was the creation of 6,000 new housing opportunities through a mixture of rental assistance and new construction. To advance the community plan, the Board of Supervisors established the Office of Supportive Housing to develop and expand and coordinate a new countywide network of housing and services, directed the county administration to view supportive housing as a critical service that required the county's leadership and involvement, and established the county's housing task force. The majority of our achievements have come from initiatives or concepts discussed during the housing task force. Since establishing the modern supportive housing system in 2015, our community has produced results. From 2015 through 2017, our programs have assisted over 5,100 persons obtain permanent housing, and each year the number of persons housed has steadily increased. A key part of that effort was launching the All the Way Home campaign, which has helped over 1,100 homeless veterans obtain permanent housing. Through the years, we have had tremendous support from businesses and the community in general. An example of this support is Cisco's commitment to donate $50 million, which is the single largest private donation to address homelessness in Santa Clara County. Most of Cisco's donation to Destination Home will be used to amplify the core strategies being implemented by the county. Our system is focused on 2 types of supportive housing, both of which combine housing and services for individuals and families with significant health and economic challenges. The first type of supportive housing is permanent supportive housing, PSH. These programs serve homeless persons with significant disabling conditions. Our PSH programs have a 90% housing retention rate and about 6% of households, only about 6% of households return to homelessness within 2 years of exiting a housing program. The second type of supportive housing is rapid rehousing, or RRH. These programs assist working individuals and families to obtain permanent housing. Among RRH programs, 72% of households retain permanent housing after completing the program. In both of these supportive housing types, the actual housing assistance can be provided through rental subsidies or through the acquisition, rehabilitation, or construction of apartments that are accessible and affordable to homeless individuals and families. In all supportive housing programs, participants sign a lease, pay rent, and may reside in the home for as long as they comply with the lease. In constructing supportive housing units, the developers comply with the jurisdiction's land use and building requirements for residential use. Of course, temporary housing programs such as emergency shelters are a key component of our system. Temporary housing programs are intended to meet participants' basic need and offer limited services. The intention is for individuals and families to move out of shelters into permanent housing. Jurisdictions have different requirements for developing shelters and different requirements for developing housing. Equally important, typically funding sources for the development of affordable or supportive housing, such as the 2016 Measure A Affordable Housing Bond or Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, cannot be used to fund the development of shelters. As I introduced in the previous slide, the supportive housing system primarily consists of two types of supportive housing. The first is service-enriched housing for individuals and families with severe disabling conditions. For example, the county and its contractors have housed and are currently supporting 119 formerly chronically homeless persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. From January 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2018, the county and its partners increased PSH programs by 50% through projects such as Project Welcome Home, the California's first Pay for Success project. The county has also partnered with organizations to tailor PSH programs for specific communities. For example, we partner with San Jose, Palo Alto, Santa Clara, and Mountain View to jointly fund PSH programs for their residents. The second program type assists working individuals and families obtain permanent housing through rental assistance, housing services, and vocational services. From January 1, 2015 through January 30th, 2018, the county and its partners have increased RRH programs by 46% through programs such as Bringing Families Home, which helps homeless families and foster youth, and the CalWorks Housing Support Program, which helps homeless families with children obtain housing and find gainful employment. Unfortunately, over 90% of our PSH and RRH resources are currently in the form of tenant-based rental assistance. To increase the supply of housing that is affordable to and accessible for homeless individuals or families, the county is working with cities and the Housing Authority to fund the development of more apartments. One of the County Housing Task Force's key accomplishments was putting the 2016 Measure A housing bond on the ballot and getting it passed. Santa Clara County is unique for having a housing bond of this size and for the extent to which housing bond funds are allocated to help the most vulnerable residents in our community. $800 million of the $950 million is dedicated to building housing for households with the least means. 84% of the housing bond will go toward our poorest residents, including an individual who has a disability and is earning about $10,000 a year, or a family of 4 earning less than $40,000 per year. Excuse me, sorry, I've got a little cold here. We are proud to report that we're slightly ahead of schedule. Since Measure A passed less than 2 years ago, we have committed $25 million toward a first-time homebuyer program, nearly $12 million toward a supportive housing acquisition and pre-development fund, and over $111 million toward 10 new housing developments in 6 cities. These 10 Measure A projects will result in 817 new apartments, including 489 apartments that will be used as PSH.
Hillary, would you like some water, please?
Oh, no, okay.
It's tap water, it's good.
Okay, thank you. It's just the breathing. I'm talking a lot more than I have in the past week.
Take your time, please. You did a great job.
On this slide, you will see the first 6 developments approved by the board at the end of 2017. On this slide, you will see the 4 developments that the board approved in June 2018. The chart on the right projects when all of the 2016 Measure A funded units will be available for occupancy. The first 2016 Measure A funded development, the Veranda in Cupertino, will open in May 2019. Thank you. Including the 489 Measure A funded PSH units. Since 2015, the county and its partners have developed or are developing 1,000 units of supportive housing. Prior to 2015, there are only about 350 apartments countywide that were set aside for homeless individuals or families. Of the 1,000 supportive housing units, 4 developments, or 182 PSH units, are in the marketing and lease-up phase, and in January 2019, 134 PSH units will open as part of First Community Housing's 2nd Street Studios. Sorry. Water is bad. No. I know. No. 6 developments, 347 PSH units, will begin the marketing lease-up phase in 2019. One example of supportive housing developments preceding 2016 Measure A is Renaissance Place, 160 units of PSH, under construction on the county-owned land on Center and Tully in San Jose. While building more housing and providing more rental assistance are necessary and should be prioritized, the county recognizes the need to provide temporary housing and other basic needs services. As a result, from January 15 to June 30th, 2018, the county and its partners have increased the number of temporary housing beds by 19%. If I may I finish from the
Yeah, actually, you know what?
table.
I was going to say we even have the slides in front of us, so why don't
Sure.
you just relax and
Sorry, just to
No, I know.
the
And
breathing.
yeah, I don't want you to fall over.
I have a cough drop.
Okay.
I was trying to.
So maybe Hillary, do you want one of us just to finish this up?
Oh, no, that's okay.
Okay, you're okay. All right.
I'm just advancing the slides.
I was going to say
Thank
they
you
beat
so
this into
much.
our heads. So.
I've been trying to get well for this. So the county has increased the number of temporary housing beds by 19%. The additional capacity has come from the county working with cities to establish or expand cold weather or inclement weather shelters in Gilroy, San Jose, Sunnyvale, Mountain View, and Palo Alto. The county and city of San Jose are partnering to reutilize the Plaza Hotel and converting Santa Clara Inn. And we're piloting safe parking programs in Morgan Hill, Mountain View, and San Jose. And I'm so happy to say that today we are opening a new LGBTQ-friendly temporary housing program, and it will admit its first resident today. Yay! Very exciting. Maybe that's where Supervisor Yeager is. Within the next 12 months, the county anticipates supporting the rehabilitation of existing shelter facilities, doubling safe parking capacity, and determining the replicability of unconventional temporary housing programs such as Hope Village. Next slide, please. The county and its partners have also been making strides to try to prevent individuals from becoming homeless. In 2016, we launched a new system for intervening when an individual or family is at imminent risk of homelessness. We are piloting a new coordinated system to prevent homelessness for about 480 families each year. And even with 2016 Measure A, the county recognizes that the need far outpaces our resources and supply. Thus, the board directed the administration to identify up to $40 million to address the affordable housing needs of persons with developmental disabilities. And the board recently increased commercial impact fees for development in the area of Stanford University in order to address housing demands in one of the county's most costly areas. Finally, the supportive housing system could not function without dedicated personnel to monitor and improve programs. In Santa Clara County, the county's Office of Supportive Housing performs the core functions of what the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development calls the continuum of care. Because of the county's investment, the Office of Supportive Housing administers a management information system that is shared by 60 agencies and over 600 users. Since November 2015, over 15,000 homeless persons have been assessed for housing needs. We have increased our funding for the HUD Continuum of Care program by 72%, or $9 million since 2013. And we are taking steps to analyze our system and rigorously evaluate our programs. Next slide. This picture of Parkside Studios is a good symbol of our supportive housing system. It's 59 units of affordable housing, 18 of which are PSH. And next door are 58 units, 29 PSH, including PSH for veterans, at a development called Onizuka Crossing. This is the site of the old Sunnyvale National Guard Armory, where we used to operate cold weather shelter. We still operate shelter in Sunnyvale at a different location. Taken together, the county and its partners have been establishing and expanding a supportive housing system that has prioritized permanent housing, but includes temporary housing. Our intention is to prevent homelessness wherever possible and to make all incidents of homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. Next slide. Thank you for allowing me to share all of our progress that the county and our partners have been making. And Kirsten and I are available to answer any questions you might have.
Holman, please, and thank you, Hillary Holman. Mr. Wasserman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Hope you feel better. Thank you for soldiering through and being here today, both of you, very much. I just wanted to point out a couple of things for people here, both with the Water District and with the county. And one was in a reference to the homeless census and survey on your PowerPoint, but I can't find any page numbers on this. I don't know what number to refer to. Yeah. But it shows the chart, and it shows at the bottom, fellow board and Water District members, it shows the chart at the bottom where Bay Area County's homeless census comparison. I don't know if that's something we can bring up on the screen or not. It's got a horizontal chart right there. Thank you. Thank you very much. And a couple of points. I've been involved, Jennifer Loving roped me in from day one. I've been a big advocate of Destination Home and supported the Measure A bond for homelessness, and we've been doing a fabulous job. And for those of you out there not aware of it, over the last 3 years, we've housed 5,200 homeless individuals, including 1,100 homeless veterans. And I know that information is in here. But this homeless situation, what this chart shows at the bottom, Bay Area County's homeless census comparison, for instance, it shows Santa Clara County was 7,394 homeless at that point in time snapshot, and that's for a county of 2 million. You take Sonoma and Alameda County, who together have a population of 2 million, the same as Santa Clara County, they have 8,400 homeless people. So when you look at these different counties, I know San Jose gets all the news and makes national attention and all the rest, and our problem is huge. Okay, I'm not minimizing our problem at all, but what I'm saying is the problem is everywhere. It's not just here. So I look at that number, I look at the populations, San Mateo, Contra Costa, Sonoma, Alameda, San Francisco. San Francisco has as many homeless people as we do,
and they have 1/2 our population. They have 850,000 people. You know, we think we have a homeless problem? Oh my God, per capita. But what my point is, everyone has a homeless issue, one extreme, one amount or another. But here's something else for you to kind of chew on. This point in time snapshot, and granted, we've been getting better at accurately counting the number of homeless people over the last couple of snapshots. We've been more resourceful in our outreach to identify, especially children, homeless individuals in our county. But 3 years ago, we did a homeless snapshot and we had 7,000 people, 7,000 homeless individuals. Over the next 3 years, we housed 5,200 homeless people. Well, if you had 7,000 and you housed 5,200, I'd sure like to be somewhere around 1,800. If our prevention efforts were working, if our raising awareness efforts were working, if our relaxing our planning and building for accessory units, higher density, lesser setbacks were working. But it's so frustrating to me that 3 years ago we had 7,000 homeless, we've housed 5,000, and we still have 7,000 homeless. And other communities, San Francisco, Sonoma, Alameda, their problem is worse than ours. So I just want to use this opportunity here with our respective boards meeting together to say we're all in this together. And we have to look for opportunities where services and transportation exist, where high-density housing can be built. It's appropriate. I don't believe it's appropriate building homeless communities out in parks. Yes, the land is there, but the services that they need in order to work their way out of homelessness, to get the mental aid that they need, to get off of addictions that they need, to get to a job on mass transit, that's what we need, where we need to locate homeless housing. The county, as you heard, currently has about $700 million left. I call it Bank of Santa Clara County. We're open for business. We're looking for approved, high-density housing for extremely low and very low income. And I'm just using this forum, this soapbox, as an opportunity to point out our comparison to other counties, what has happened even though we've housed 5,000 people, which is incredible, absolutely incredible. And also my concern was sweeps. Sweeps doesn't solve the problem. Sweeps just relocates the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wasserman. We're going to be looking at, like I say, those opportunities coming up in a couple of motions here. Mr. Cortese.
Thank you, Chair Santos. I appreciate very much, you know, the presentations from both organizations today, and of course the county's presentations are really sort of heavy on the permanent supportive housing side, because that's where Measure A has allowed us, you know, to put our stake in the ground and where most of the action is coming. And you know, a lot of that emphasis came out of really kind of a mantra of housing first, you know, a couple of years back, more than a couple of years back, prior to the 2016 elections, and really pushed heavily by the Obama administration. We grabbed onto that here, even though I don't think the federal concern was really so much with us or what was happening here, but what was happening in other places around the country, New York, Chicago, and other places where they've done a terrific job of sheltering people by the tens of thousands, but they really didn't have permanent supportive housing to move them into, or even just low affordable or low income housing, or extremely low income housing to move them into. And they still have that situation. I was just in New York last week, but it's really a reverse kind of an approach that's been taken in those places, and probably because of weather and so forth. I mean, if they were trying to use creeks and underpasses as a transitional housing system, which is basically what we have today here, people would freeze to death constantly. If that's that didn't come out right, but people would be freezing to death constantly during the winters. So they were kind of forced to do sheltering, and in New York, they've done something which I want to propose to our Board of Supervisors soon, hopefully have the support of my colleagues at least to get a response to a referral to do a right to shelter ordinance here, which basically says what our philosophy already is, and that's aligned with our support for the Universal Declaration of Rights. We just adopted a resolution to that effect recently, all of which says that basic shelter is an inalienable right. And no, we shouldn't be sweeping people from one creek to the other. I agree with Supervisor Wasserman on that. I think most of us probably agree to that. But the fact of the matter is we don't have an adequate shelter system here. We've done a terrific job, and thanks to the efforts of the entire Measure A campaign, Supervisor Chavez took a significant role in that. Supervisor Wasserman played a significant role in identifying these numbers in the first place by telling us, before we go to the ballot with anything, we need to figure out what the numbers are and what the return on investment is going to be if we start housing people. And once we were all satisfied with that, we went forward. So we've kind of checked off this box in a big way on the permanent supportive housing side. On the extremely low income side, where there never really was capital money, even in the days of redevelopment agencies, there was no ELI money. There was really no homeless money. What we haven't done yet is figured out or created a fund for the feeder system that would feed into that permanent supportive housing for basic shelter. If we had an ordinance today that said everybody must have shelter, we'd be hard pressed to figure out where to put them. So a couple of thoughts that I have, and I just want to close here. I don't know if the Water District the board here, or the Water District, or legal counsel, or the executive's office has taken a look at Martin v. Boise, which is a recent Ninth Circuit opinion, which came down in September. I know our legal counsel's taken a look at it, and I don't want to characterize it. I know our legal counsel's James Williams here, and maybe he could sort of frame what the ruling was in that published opinion. And correct me if I'm wrong, but fundamentally it stands for the fact that you can't use law enforcement to enforce the sweeping, is what we call it here, of homeless encampments if you don't have adequate shelter to move those folks into. It basically draws on the principle that cruel and unusual punishment is unconstitutional, and it is cruel and unusual punishment to push people around from one place to another without providing the appropriate shelter for them. That case comes very, very close, in my humble opinion, to kind of forcing us, whether we have an ordinance or not, to a right to shelter posture. Because at some point, I believe that case puts us in the position of being very vulnerable to litigation by advocacy groups. Again, I don't want to speak for counsel, but that's just my concern. And that's probably better discussed in closed session litigation meetings. But perhaps we are becoming more and more vulnerable with cases like this to being sued either for injunctive relief to say stop it, or worse, to put our treasuries at risk. So I think we have a tremendous interest in working together on this, because it is, as we say, kind of in the street language or in the vernacular, it's basically underpasses in our riparian corridors where the homeless that aren't in inadequate shelters are, and it's our concern. For a variety of reasons, as we occupy so much of this field of homelessness, including the wraparound services that Supervisor Wasserman was talking about, and the intervention services, and you control the land jurisdiction where folks are ending up. And we recognize that. I recognize that. The last comment I want to make is, and I'll frame it as a question because maybe all of you have discussed this and have a position on this as well. The county, I think it's fair to say, you know, our COO Miguel Marquez is here and our executive as well. Keeley from our Department of Supportive Housing is someone I meet with regularly on this topic that I'm going to bring up next. But we have already sanctioned Hope Village, one sanctioned encampment on a piece of government property. We have certain rights through recent state legislation to do more of that. And our posture, at least by vote of the Board of Supervisors, is where that's possible, to the extent that we can continue to afford to do that kind of work, let's continue to do it. Location is challenging. And frankly, there's some locations in my district that we're looking at now that have nothing to do with the water district or any other agencies per se, just county-owned locations. But I'd be curious to know if there's any appetite from the water district in, doing anything along the spectrum or continuum, if not sanctioned encampments per se, bridge housing, temporary bridge housing, ADU-like units, or anything like that on water district property that the county can come in and kind of replicate the same kind of arrangement that we did with San Jose recently, which is, give us the land, at a nominal lease. We can come in and run the rest of the program in conjunction with the appropriate community-based agencies. And if that's of interest, I'd like to hear about it either now or after this meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Many topics that you brought up, Dave. They're very important, and I'll be making a proposal here soon after we hear from some more folks and some more presentations, that you'll have the opportunity to weigh in on that, and those opportunities that Mr. Washington made, and we can address that. Ms. Keegan.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments, my colleagues here. In particular, Supervisor Cortese's comments regarding Hope Village. Actually, I was approached within the last couple of weeks by City of San Jose Council Member Deb Davis regarding the potential for putting in a sanctioned encampment, not just in my district, in my neighborhood, about a block and a half away from where I live. And I am supportive of that idea. Director Estamera and I are going to be going on a tour with Council Member Davis to take a look at the existing Hope Village and see whether it seems like this is something that we could bring forward. And we certainly would welcome the county's participation if that's something that we can make happen. We have long-term plans for that property, but in the short term, within the next couple of years, it's possible that we could enter into some kind of arrangement to deal with that. In preparation for this meeting, I looked a little bit at some of the demographics for the homeless population within our county. And the County of Santa Clara actually, back in 2011, prepared an excellent county fact sheet on homelessness with a spotlight on chronic homelessness. And, the part of the challenging things are, if you look at the chronically homeless, more than 2/3 of them have substance abuse issues, and over half suffer from mental illness. Ergo, the substance abuse, they're probably self-medicating. Little over a third suffer from physical disability, almost as many from chronic health problems. So this is very challenging. The information provided didn't get into the whole issue of the formerly incarcerated, but when you look nationally at people who've formerly been incarcerated, they are 10 times more likely to be homeless than those folks who've never been incarcerated. So this is our second day of talking about homeless issues, because yesterday we talked about them with the City of San Jose. And the reason I brought up some of these challenges that our unhoused community faces is because there's one thing that I think is unique about Santa Clara County, and I know that you've been working on this already, but it hasn't been so much a topic of our conversation today. But it's really dealing with some of the social service implications here. When you're dealing with a population that's mentally ill, or that has issues with drugs and alcohol, that have been incarcerated and released back into society without any kind of support system, these are issues above and beyond just the scarcity of housing. These are people who, if they were put in housing, would still continue to be struggling. And so I think that's part of the partnership that I'm really interested in, because, you know, we don't have land use authority, and we certainly don't have the ability to help the mentally ill. And yet, when our employees go out to try and do their jobs, you know, they're being threatened with weapons or aggressive dogs, or, you know, all kinds of challenges. And I know Supervisor Cortese, you know, you alluded to the fact that in our dealings with these kinds of problems, there's legal implications associated with what we do. We face a legal challenge, I think, ourselves, in that we have an obligation to keep our creeks and streams clean, and we're not able to do that right now. So I know that, and I don't want to steal the thunder of Chair Santos, he has some ideas about how to deal with this in a holistic kind of way, but I think all of us have a piece of the puzzle here. So we may have property that's available for short-term or even long-term housing. We have a responsibility to keep our creeks clean. We have responsibilities to our employees to allow them to do their work without being assaulted. And the city of San Jose is in a position to provide housing, though they do have a jobs in housing balance, as those of you who are on San Jose City Council are definitely aware of. You folks are not only providing housing, but you are the safety net for this county. And so how do all those pieces fit together? I think it's really important as elected officials that we're all on the same page and that we're able to support each other in our efforts. And I know that we've made great strides to do that. I just want to encourage us to continue, and like I said, I think Chair Santos has some thoughts in terms of how to facilitate that. So I'll yield the floor now. I'm interested in hearing what my colleagues say.
Thank you, Barbara. Vice President.
Thank you. I just wanted to address the very last point that you raised around you know, our strategies around homelessness. And I don't think this is directly, Director Keegan, what you, I mean, you had a bigger picture, but I just want to say one thing, that I think we have to acknowledge that, or I would like people to acknowledge that the approach we're taking as a county has been kind of, I think you even said it in your document, we are looking at all fronts. And what you had a presentation today on was really the housing department's body of work, but the social services agency, our mental health department, our drug and alcohol department, there are a lot of tools that we have in the toolbox. And because of that, we are able to house people who are chronically homeless at a 90% rate. And the reason I want to keep putting that out there is I think it's really important to understand that I think that we have a strategy that could be a winning strategy as it relates to housing people, you know, using housing first instead of housing last. And the second thing I wanted to point out was that as it relates to the health and vitality of the people that are living on the streets, I think it's really difficult to know what comes first, because I think being homeless and being in an environment where you feel pretty hopeless could trigger mental illness, it could trigger drug and alcohol use. And I only say that because I want to make sure that we are having a conversation about the community writ large, and in part because when we look at the dramatic rise in homelessness across the country, we have to acknowledge a couple of things that put us in that position. One is that for generations, we have not had wages rise at the same level that we've had the cost of living rise. And so because of that, we have a whole bunch of people who are upside down. And then for a long time prior to the Affordable Care Act, we had people who were really forced into homelessness with one serious medical illness. So we're pretty behind. The other thing I wanted to comment on is the issue that you raised, and that Supervisor Wassman raised about the increased homeless count. You know, one of the things that I think we are learning how to do is do the count better. So, and I think this is probably true for a lot of cities and counties, and I just want to give an example of what happened on our last homeless count. We had an emphasis that was focused on young people and children and families, and we found more of them because we emphasized it. We looked. And I think that's important because I don't think we want to ignore the seriousness of the problem or the numbers, but I also want to recognize that some of us doing a better job is going to unveil a more complicated, deeper problem. And I think the other thing that you commented on that I just want to make sure I acknowledge is this idea of those who are housed and unhoused, that the number of people that we have who are couch surfing, we are finding this particularly true for victims of domestic violence who, for all intents, they're homeless, but they're not HUD identified homeless. So one thing is that I think Hillary did a good job of sort of taking a broad look at what we're doing, but there's even more that didn't fit on the slides that I wanted to make you aware of. So the reason I'm raising all of that is that I don't think we're done coming up with good ideas. I think that's right. And I also think that there are some approaches that we had in the past that we thought were the right approaches that were wrong. And for example, you must be clean, sober, and perfect to get into housing. Well, I don't know if any of you have yourself had a drug or alcohol problem or have someone in your family, but imagine them getting better homeless. And that's just not even a real possibility. So, to that end, I'm really interested in hearing, Dick, your thoughts. I almost said Supervisor Santos. But Dick, your thoughts, and then I have given some thought to your request as well.
Good. Thank you for all the comments. Yeah, we're on. All right. Before we go to public comments, talking is great. We're going to start taking some action steps, and that's what it's about today. I do want to take the time. It was about 3-4 years ago. Then President Cortese called me up and said, "Can you get a couple folks?" And got Tony, got Barbara, and Cindy Chavez, and went down and made the press conference on 6th Street at J-Town. Said to get the housing, and that was just doors opened up. And I want to commend you and everybody at that time because it passed overwhelmingly. So all our residents really care. And I can tell you this, between the Board of Supervisors and the Board of Directors up here, this is the best time to help. We may not solve it, but put a dent and decrease the homeless. This is the ample time. So with that open comment, we have a few folks. And everybody else, yesterday was, I'm several hours on it, but we're always open. And we're going to take some action, but I want to hear from the public. John Tucker and Ingrid Bella from Ask Me 101. Water District employees.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors and County Board of Supervisors. My name is John Tucker. I'm the business agent with AFSCME Local 101. We represent the Employees Association here at the district, which is about 500 staff. Our incoming president, Robert Ewing, could not be here today, but he's asked us to help pinch hit for him. Next to me is Ingrid Bella, General Services Manager, who is the outgoing president of our union. She was, much to my dismay, promoted to be a manager a few days ago. So, but we have asked her to speak one more time. She'll speak on behalf of AFSCME to convey some of the serious issues that our employees are facing daily as they perform their work. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Good morning, members of the District Board and County Supervisors. Over the past several years, and by the way, there's a letter that's going to be coming to you as well. It's going to encapsulate a lot of what I'm going to be stating here. So over the past several years, our members have witnessed our watershed creeks become increasingly impacted by encampment-related issues. We are desperately in need of solutions to help our staff complete important work that must be performed to keep our waterways clear based on regulatory restrictions, to help us mitigate potential flooding, and to ensure that there is clean, uncontaminated water in our water supplies. About a month ago, CEO Norma Camacho and her team of chief operating officers held a listening session with field staff to better understand the conditions they are facing every day in their jobs. The jobs that they're doing include vegetation specialists, biologists, field operations administrators, maintenance workers, heavy equipment operators, and field construction supervisors. These jobs require them to be walking along the banks, creeks, levees, working with chainsaws, monitoring conditions, taking samples of water, etc. What we heard at that listening session was how the increasing homelessness crisis is impacting our staff, as well as the work. They are exposed to dangerous and toxic working conditions, and many staff shared that they fear for their lives and liken the environment to a war zone in some areas. They are exposed to daily pathogens from bodily fluids navigating through sharp needles or trudging through fecal matter. There are aggressive dogs protecting their territory. Many of the homeless residents express anger at our staff because they think that the water district is there to harass or move them when all we want to do is be able to do our job safely. Our members have encountered punji sticks and other traps designed to inflict harm. And it's not just the homeless community. It's the criminal element that prey on the homeless and use the creeks as corridors for nefarious activities. Staff had unknowingly walked into prostitution and drug deals. They get stared down by alleged gang members after having painted over graffiti. They find unspent ammunition and casings, and they even have discovered bodies in the waterways. Some of our employees have even been infected by diseases such as Shigella and cellulitis, just by walking in these contaminated areas. As you go into your discussion, the members of ASME ask that you take these matters seriously and address the dangers that we've outlined and deal with on a day-to-day basis. Just as you elevate the health and safety of the waterways for our communities, you must protect those that carry out that work. We are not public safety officers. We rely on trained professionals to protect and serve us all. We are asking for more resources to be given for law enforcement patrols, for solutions that help the homeless find housing, and eventually eliminate any of these activities near the waterways. We cannot continue to spend money and resources on the same places using the same processes and expect things to change. Let's look for long-term solutions in these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Gail Osmer.
Good morning, or almost good afternoon. So I'm just going to have a couple of thoughts, and I'm changing most of them because the last person that spoke, the reason why I go into homeless encampments all the time. I'm no more scared to go into a homeless encampment by myself. These people are in crisis. The water district comes in, the staff, they come in, and the Tucker and the city, they come in like bulldogs, okay? This is why the homeless people are scared. They're in crisis. They come in, they sweep, they kick them out, they take their belongings. The woman I brought yesterday, I went to pick her up. She was getting swept. They took all her belongings. She had them set aside. She had no shoes except the shoes on her feet. They took her belongings and they put them in the trash, the dumpsters. I was here to talk about the waterways, but you're hearing things that if some of you maybe need to go. I don't know how many of you all have been to sweeps or abatements, but if you haven't, I would love to have you come with me, unannounced. Don't tell the city you're coming, so you can see what really goes on when they come in and they do the abatements, how the homeless people are being treated. Okay, I've said this and said this and said this. Another thing that we advocate for are dumpsters. I know you don't want the homeless people to be out on the creeks. I understand that. But if they had a small little dumpster, that they could put their trash in. When I go, I bring them bags. Nobody brings them bags. They clean up their homes. They put the bags out. Nobody picks it up. The water district, when they sweep, leave some of the trash there. They don't 100% clean up when they go in and do the abatement. We need housing, and I thank you, supervisors, for all your help and support, but something has to change with these sweeps. It's not working. It's costing you all in the city millions of dollars. There's no reason for the sweeps. If they had, obviously housing, but that's not coming tomorrow. but we need to help these homeless people. And when you have meetings, maybe smaller meetings or talking about issues, please include the homeless people. Include the advocates. We've been there. They've been there. They've been swept. They've been kicked out of their homes. That's why they're in crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. David Hernandez.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Hernandez. I'm the executive director of Opening Doors. We're a couple blocks from the downtown San Jose area in one of the highest poverty zones in the city of San Jose. I also want to thank Richard Santos for chairing the ad hoc committee on homelessness. I appreciate all the work you've done, Richard. One of the things we haven't heard about are how folks coordinate meals out in these encampment sites. One of the things you have seen and that you know of are a large volume of paper goods and lunch bags and food, and no one has addressed that particular issue on how to coordinate folks that want to come out and feed. Our group has started a program as of the summer. It's called Meals Without Borders. We do come out to parks. We do hit the St. James corridor and feed regularly. We do pick up our trash. We do talk to clients about trash. We give them bags. We take their trash. So one of the things you definitely want to look at is the coordination of meal providers across the county. This summer, we started to create a community task force driven by community members, ordinary citizens. So we all know that these encampments have started to erupt in our neighborhoods, in our parks, at our schools, in front of our local businesses, and now in our very own backyards. So that is what's driven part of this new community-driven task force to get off the ground. The purpose, we definitely want to address the quality of life for neighborhoods. A lot of times we get together, and Gail may have, just to echo what Gail had said, we don't involve ordinary residents when we talk about homelessness. We don't shoot out a blast and let people know there's a meeting going on. We rarely see local residents and neighborhoods coming out to these types of meetings. I live in one of the highest populated areas of homeless encampments in the city of San Jose. It's District 4. I was born and raised in San Jose. I know the area like the back of my hand. I've seen homelessness from its very beginning, and now it's surging beyond manageability. So we really need to work on that, and that's part of what the task force is tasked with. We are a group of, and recruiting, members of the community, members of neighborhood associations, local businesses, some nonprofits, and we're hoping down the line that we can bring in the county and the city to participate at some of our task force meetings. Ultimately, we've got a large road ahead of us, and it's not filled with roses and daisies. We got a lot of hard work, and the only way we can do that is by working together and stepping up our game. You know, my kid tells me all the time, we go in the ballpark, Dad, step up your game, you know, move it. And that's what we need to do. We need to stop talking about things and get things done. If you look at some of the biggest cities around, San Francisco, what are they doing? They're doing all kinds of stuff. Oakland, look at Oakland with the tough sheds. They're moving ahead of us, and we're still trying to figure out what to do, how to clean up certain areas, neighborhoods, and so forth. So that being said, thank you for convening today. I appreciate someone telling me about the meeting, one, and two, happy holidays. I hope Santa's good to you guys. Thank you.
David, isn't tonight there's a homeless meeting or tiny homes tonight in Berryessa?
Yes, I'll be there.
No,
Yeah.
6 o'clock at Berryessa
6 to
Center?
8 o'clock.
That's
We're hoping
for
to have about
people
500 residents there.
And thanks for taking the time. We had a private meeting to educate me more on this issue. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Folks, we got a lot of things to do here, and I can tell you that there's a lot of input, you know, about Ninth Circuit Court, about how we did things in the past. Did we change them? Not on? Here we go. There you go. $240 million, it works. So anyway, got a lot of things to do, but if you, and to keep on debating won't do it. So what we're going to do is this, the homeless issue is very, very sensitive, so I'd like to propose that the district co-host a summit sometime next year, and real soon, to gather other partners, stakeholders, together, and really work towards some real innovative solutions to this issue. I'd like to hear from my board members and so on and the supervisors, because I really believe so many other issues are there. We need to hear from everyone. We need to bring in, whether it be Google, whether it be Cisco, we need to hear mental health. We can go on and on. We don't have all the expertise. And the way we do things, maybe it has to be changed. But we can learn from it, and if we really want to partners, let's do that. So I'll listen to some comments. Before we do that, the CEO.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just did want to respond to ASME's comment. And I know that we've been working and collaborating with the Sheriff's Office for quite some time to, in the near term, provide that type of protection for our employees that are going out there. And these are not the employees doing the sweep. These are people who are taking water quality samples, or inspecting our levees and all that. And so I know that agreement has been on pause right now, and I would like us to kind of collectively with our staffs to push that agreement forward so that we have basically the security support we need for our staff when they do go out there. Thank you.
That's why my proposal is, you have heard it from the CHP, you have, I don't know why this is going off all of a sudden, but anyway, all those things have to be looked at. We can sit here and piecemeal these things, they're going to go nowhere. We've got to sit down with all 15 cities and everybody in Santa Clara County to help do more than we're doing, and we can't do it by ourselves. It has to be everybody. And when our cost goes up, we're paying more in damage control. So let's do some things now. That's why we have Captain Romero out there from the Sheriff's Department. We just met with the Police Chief of San Jose. But it's not just their responsibility. We have others, Caltrans. There's so many state legislation. As a few of you at my age, if you remember when Reagan was in office, Governor Reagan, and the state hospitals were closed down. I remember like yesterday. I was a firefighter at Station 8 on 17th Street on Coyote, and we went from 150 calls a month to 350 because most of those calls were mental. It's sad, but they can't live in the creeks. So we got some motions to make. We got to move on, folks. Mr. Varela.
Just want to call out in South County, in the city of Gilroy, we have the Compassion Center that works very, very closely with the homeless. And during these cold months, the armory is open in that area, and there's a huge proliferation of the homeless coming from all areas of the South County into Gilroy because the armory is open from, I believe, the months of November through March, and then the armory is closed. I realize it's a temporary solution, but where there are armories that are existing throughout the county, that would offer opportunity for a large percentage of the homeless to utilize those facilities, not just during the winter months, but all year long. So using that example of what I've seen and what I witnessed in Gilroy could be an example for other areas in the county that also offer armories as a temporary solution.
We do that here in San Jose, and I've been through all this. That's why we have to have a summit. So let me ask the question one more time.
That was a mistake.
Let me ask one more time, please. We're going to start with Barbara. Barbara, do you have an interest in doing that? Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Wasserman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, you're not the boss of me. I want to say something.
I never said I was.
I'm just teasing. Why don't you do that? Why don't you make a motion and then your board can vote on it, and then I have one that I want to.
I just asked for interest.
Oh, interest. Okay. Yes, but I have a twist on that.
Go ahead.
Of course. Okay. So let me just make I would like to make a recommendation. So, first of all, there's a lot of work happening, and so one thing that I would want to recommend is that prior to doing a summit, I think it would be interesting to get to reach out to the 15 city councils and their staffs and ask for one or two council members and one or two board members and one or two of you to go and do a deep dive so we really understand all the work that's being done on the ground, and then we can identify in a much more informed way what the key issues are, and then it makes sense to pull together a summit, because I think otherwise we're going to do what we always do, which is people come and present. There's no way to make a decision. Nobody leaves with a to-do list, and I'd rather us have something more concrete that can be presented.
I think that's a great idea, Cindy. Thank you.
Thank you. And the reason for my hesitation, Chair, when you recognized me, was I thought you were speaking on behalf of the Water District convening the summit. and I didn't understand the connection with the Board of
No
Supervisors.
problem, because we've had discussions off the record, and you've always been supportive. The issue is we've had an audit, I'm sorry, a homeless committee here, myself, Tony Esterman, and John Varela. And there's just certain things we just can't do. So that's why I wanted to broaden it.
Yeah.
I think your suggestion, starting out with the cities and staffs, and see what we can do, especially with the county, with all the different departments, and then branch out to the big ones. So I like that. Dave, are you all for that?
Yes, I think that's a good
Yeah,
idea,
thanks for
and,
waving you.
and I think that subsequent to that, we should do something I know my office has been working on with the interfaith community, and some other grassroots organizations, which is a broader summit. I did hear your description as very similar to what Supervisor Chavez was saying, that we need the governmental agencies to get together and kind of do a high-level convening, and the county's pretty good at helping with that, those kind of convenings. So I think that we'd be all in. But I do think at some point, I actually think one of the public speakers indirectly alluded to that. We did a firearms summit last April with about 300 people, and everybody was represented from the whole spectrum, and a lot of good came out of that. In fact, the Board of Supervisors just adopted the final report from that, and it's hard to get a lot of good to come out of a conversation about firearms these days. And I think this issue is equally volatile in the community. I suspect in Berryessa tonight it will be a somewhat contentious discussion. And I think, when you do it right and you break people into tabletop exercises, and you have facilitators for each table, and you know what you're trying to accomplish ahead of time instead of doing something town hall style, you can get a lot of good work done. And the part about what the speaker alluded to is I think the homeless themselves need to be at the table. I mean, if you have tables of 10, there should be 2 homeless individuals at each one of those tables so people can understand what their point of view is, because 97% of them are from our county. And as we say, they're houseless residents of the county, not homeless. Their home is here. And so they have a right to speak up at those kind of convenings as well. So some kind of maybe a 1-2 or sequential process, or to use, I like Supervisor Chavez's word, how the scaffolding works on that, I think would be important.
Mr. Cortez, so you know, in all our meetings with our ad hoc committee, we had Robert Agree giving us advice on the homeless. So
Great.
Tony, you're all for it, because I've talked with you before. Nye?
Yeah, of course, I support this summit idea, but I do agree with Supervisor Chavez's suggestion that
No question.
so that the summit does not become a status report from everybody. We need to go beyond the status report, and then really some action coming out of it.
Thank you, John. Yes. Thank you so much. We're going to move on, folks. Here we got. Thank you for all the information. I think it's a healthy discussion. I think Cindy made a great suggestion, and I know we're going to make some movement. And here's a motion. Now that I will entertain a motion from the District Board of Directors on the recommendation that the district and county boards receive district staff's presentation regarding district's roles, responsibilities, and coordinated efforts in cleaning up homeless encampments along waterways. That the district and county boards receive county staff's presentation related to affordable housing efforts, and forward recommendation relating to the possibilities of convening to focus on the issues associated with this item. And the last would be, do we want together to have co-host this homeless summit by starting out with President Chavez's direction? Do I have a motion? Motion by Tone, second by John. All in favor? All opposed? That carries. Cindy?
So I'll ask the Board of Supervisors if they're interested in moving forward with a summit that would be preceded by a working group that we would collaborate with the Water District staff and the county staff to design that pre-working group, and then include Supervisor Cortez's recommendation to use this summit as a way to really bring a cross-section of the community together using the magic of tabletop exercises. Would someone make that motion? One of my colleagues?
So moved.
Well, I'm just restating it for you all. I don't know, the chair's not always supposed to make motions, so I thought I would just tee it up for
Fine,
you.
I'll second.
All right. more robust discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously.
Cynthia, thank you, and Board of Supervisors, thank you. Item number 7.
Well, so I just want to make an observation on time, and that is, as everybody leaves, the board will lose quorum at 12:30, and so what I wanted to ask is, from a process perspective, if the staff could do a presentation on this last item, but that we would not formally be receiving the report necessarily, but having a presentation, and I think this was a request that we actually made of you, so we want to make sure we could hear it, and next time I'll know to arm wrestle to put this first. So I don't know who's presenting on this item.
Item number 7, today. Chief Hawks.
Good afternoon. We are now doing a presentation on the water utility enterprise and a few very important items, including water supply, an introduction and some information about our capital improvement program. And so we have 3 presenters today, and they'll begin their presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair Santos, board members, supervisors. Again, my name is Kurt Ahrens, Deputy Operating Officer for all water operations and maintenance at the Water District. I'm just going to provide a very quick, I'll try to move it along since I know it's getting late, history and overview of our water distribution system. And then we'll have other speakers come up and talk a little bit about some of our water supply planning and some of our major projects that are coming. Just real quick, this is a good historical graph showing the groundwater levels within Santa Clara County. You know, back in the early 1900s, primarily very vast agricultural industry, Valley of Heart's Delight. As the water usage began to increase, more wells were put in, groundwater started to subside, and 1929 voters approved and formed the Santa Clara Valley Water Conservation District, who was charged with restoring groundwater levels. They started building reservoirs and to capture local rainfall and then replenishing the groundwater basin with that. So as you can see, that first little hump in approximately 1940 was as we started to recover our groundwater basin. Again, as population continued to grow, demands grew, groundwater basin again began to drop. It wasn't until 1960s we brought in imported water from the State Water Project and constructed our first water treatment plant. Again, that recovered a little bit. In 1980s, we brought in a second imported source from our Federal Water Project and built our third water treatment plant. Since then, we've really relied on conservation and recycled water to, again, make maximum use of the resources that we do have. Real quickly, this is a county map showing our main reservoir facilities. The district has 10 surface reservoirs where we capture groundwater or surface water during the winter and use that water primarily to recharge the groundwater basin. We have over or close to 100 different percolation ponds throughout the county that we use to recharge that water. We have 2 imported sources. The State Water Project comes in the north part of the county. It's sort of the orange line here at the top. And then we have a Federal Water Project coming in from San Luis Reservoir in the south. We then have a network of large diameter pipelines where we're able to move that water throughout the valley, delivering it to our water treatment plants, where we treat the water and distribute that to our retailers to help offset the use of groundwater. We provide treated water so we don't have to pump the groundwater basin. And we also have Hetchechi system, which is circling the southern part of the bay, or north part of the county. This has provided a very vast and dependable, reliable system. We have imported water, local surface water and groundwater. Conservation, like I said, is a big part of our water supply portfolio now, as well as recycled water. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy Hemeter from Water Supply and Conservation Unit to talk a little bit about our water supply planning efforts. Thank you.
And Tracy, before you begin, I just wanted, before we lose quorum, I need to make sure that we take any public comment that was meant for the end of the meeting prior to our losing quorum at the board. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda but within the purview of the committee or on this item? Great, thank you. Of course.
And before we transition to the next phase of the presentation, I just want to ask a quick question relative to the map. I don't know which of these numbers apply because we have packet pages in our county packet, but it looks like 7A possibly, I don't know. It's, anyway, the slide that has the map, the Pacheco pump station stops, or has a sort of a dot on it here, a mark on it, sort of near San Luis Reservoir, but not really contiguous to it. I know you talked about the reservoir as part of the system, at least to some extent. What is the relationship between the reservoir, San Luis Reservoir, Pacheco Pump Station, the rest of the system, for example, Anderson? Is that all interconnected? And then what happens what I'm trying to get at is what happens in a flood control situation in terms of all that?
Sure. Let me first provide a little more information about our federal Central Valley Project supply. So San Luis Reservoir is half a state and half a federal water storage facility. Our federal water is stored in San Luis Reservoir. The Pacheco pumping plant is a pump station that pulls water from the western side of the reservoir. So where other contractors pull it out through the O'Neill Forebay and through that way, we actually have a separate pump station which pulls water through an intake from the western part of San Luis Reservoir.
And what triggers that? What can trigger that? If the reservoir, if San Luis Reservoir is full, do the state and the Fed tell you to get your share of the water out of there?
That plant runs pretty much 365 days a year. So that's how we get water from San Luis Reservoir. It pumps it out into a tank, and from there it's able to gravity flow through a series of federally owned, how we maintain and operate the system, pipelines and tunnels that bring it into Santa Clara County.
And where does it go next?
It terminates, the federal facilities terminate at the Pacheco pumping plant, and from there it would continue in our pipeline system, typically to our water treatment plants. It would go to help provide water to our Santa Teresa and Rinconada water treatment plants. We are able to turn that water out into creeks for recharge, and then we are able, when conditions are right, to use the pumping plant to pump that water into Anderson Reservoir under certain conditions.
So if Anderson Reservoir is full, then where does that water go?
We bring it directly into the valley, and we use it to provide water to our water treatment plants. The water is treated and then distributed to our retailers.
And you have the capacity outside of Anderson to store whatever water you need to get out of San Luis Reservoir? It's a pretty big reservoir. I'm just wondering, I'm really trying to ask if the system currently has the capacity to take whatever you need to get out of San Luis Reservoir during the rainy season and distribute it into the valley without exacerbating flood conditions. That's what I'm asking you.
Oh. Yeah, we're not required to store that water in Anderson. We can bring it in throughout the year and use that water immediately as we bring it in. Those facilities also provide water for San Benito County, just as a side note.
So if San Luis is full and Anderson's full, and obviously San Luis can't handle any more capacity, so you need to keep the pumping station running, correct?
Well, again,
can you turn off the pumping station and just tell the state and the Fed, hey, we don't have a capacity to bring that water into Santa Clara County, so we're turning Pacheco Pump Station off. That's the question I'm asking you. Can you turn Pacheco Pump Station off at will, irrespective of the capacity of San Luis Reservoir to hold additional water?
Yeah, we choose, because we operate the pump station, when to run the pump station. We have a certain allocation of water in San Luis, and we can either leave it there or we can take it out when we want to use it.
So state and federal government that you said controls San Luis, owns San Luis,
Right.
can't dictate to you to get water out of there?
Not throughout the year. However, we can't carry it over into the following year necessarily. If we leave it there,
I'm asking you a yes or no question. Can the state or federal government dictate to the Santa Clara Valley Water District to pump water out of San Luis Reservoir because it's that capacity? Yes or no?
I'm trying to think of it. I'd say no, although I'm sure
So-
there's extenuating circumstances here.
Supervisor Cortese. So just a little background of how fundamentally we run the system.
I'm not going to get a yes or no answer.
Yeah, no. I'm going to answer you.
It's all right. If I'm not, I don't want to waste everybody's time because I'll find out through the State Water Resources Board or somebody else. But you know, if we're going to have meetings like this and I'm going to disrupt my schedule and come over here for 3 hours to talk about things, I just expect crisp responses from whoever's going to answer the questions, or just say, go to hell, we're not going to give you the answer to that question. It's fine. I'm a big boy. I can take that, and I'll get my answers somewhere else.
So
But I think I framed a yes or no question there, and what I keep getting is, let us explain some background information to you or some other information. So it's fine. You don't have to continue to respond. You know, the hour is late. It's almost 12:30. We're going to lose a quorum.
Let's give her a chance.
All right.
Go ahead.
So essentially, the water that does come in from San Luis is imported. Its primary purpose is to go to our treatment plants. And so that's how we run the system, is to bring that water in for treatment plants. Our reservoirs, their primary purpose for water supply is to recharge the groundwater basin. So we essentially will predominantly run that water to our treatment plants. And then if there's a need to put some additional water in the reservoirs, we'll then move that water into the reservoirs. So we don't always move water into reservoirs from that location. I hope that helps. So it's essentially not a predominant path
Dave
for it.
asked specifically about St. Louis because of state and federal. Can they, go ahead, please.
We will lose that water if we don't pump it out because of carryover restrictions. So either we take it and we bring it to the treatment plants and we make the best beneficial use of the water for our ratepayers, or we lose the water. But we choose to push it through the system, through the treatment plants.
Right. And so what I'd like to know, and if it's too lengthy of a response again, is, and this isn't a yes or no answer, is what happens if our storage capacity here in Santa Clara County, I'm using the we, the we word here, what if we don't have the capacity here either in our reservoir system because of rain conditions, winter conditions, or in our treatment facilities to take that water out? Does the water district just say, sorry, we're turning off the Chaco pump station and we're going to
No, we actually have
we're going to give up the water, the wholesale water that we paid for?
We actually have out-of-county storage. So what we do is we program the water from an imported perspective, and if we know there's going to be excess capacity or carryover where we can't bring it into the system, if that were the case, or we know we have extra in a given year, we're going to go bank that, because in a time of drought, we want to bring that water back in county. So that's how we manage that imported water. So we have a lot of tools to not lose the water, but operationally, if there is an issue or concern of bringing it in, we won't. We'll put it somewhere else out of county. I hope that helps.
And Dave, to help, we're making a deal with Contra Costa to take that banking water. We also send it to Tropical. So what you're saying is, are you going to get flooded and we don't want it? No, we bank it. We don't just throw it away. It's always used. I hope that helps. I appreciate the question.
It helps. It helps. And I don't want to get any deeper into it today, but
I want to
it's just, my interest is, in terms of taking a position myself on whether or not the water district needs additional capacity, which I understand has been an issue. I'm trying to ask the question, do you have capacity now for those kind of conditions? You're saying yes. So it kind of calls into question for me, does that mean you don't need any more? I don't know, but one of the reasons I wanted to get this presentation, have it part of our agenda today, was so I could get a better understanding of what's driving water district decision-making during times of heavy rains and need for capacity, what you do in emergency situations in terms of diverting water that needs to get from one place to another, and you just started to explain that. And then lastly, does that mean that you have enough capacity already, you don't need any more? So, and if you do need more, why is that? But I'm one of those people that's going to have to leave in about 5 minutes here. So maybe, what we call this kind of a situation at the county, what we call for sometimes is just an off-agenda report, just a memorandum that is distributed to everybody that attempts to answer those questions. And maybe that would be in order.
What's in order? First of all, thank you for the question, because we all get educated, because we all looked at floods here just recently, and we have droughts. We need to know both. So make sure it's on the board agenda for all of us to make sure we understand it ourselves as board of directors. And number two is make sure that Mr. Cortese has a report, which Chief Hawks will do. We sure appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody? Go ahead. Where are we at, Kurt? Do you want to interrupt you? Tracy, go ahead. But thank you. Good questions.
Good afternoon, supervisors and board members. Again, my name is Tracy Hemmeter. I'm in our Water Supply Planning and Conservation Unit, and I'll be doing a brief update on our current water supply planning efforts. Our district board has adopted in 2012 what we called an Ensure Sustainability Strategy. This water supply strategy has 3 elements for providing water through a variety of conditions. The first one is to secure existing supplies and infrastructure. So this includes making sure that we keep our dams working, that our pump stations are working, that our pipes are working, and that our local and imported water supplies are sufficient to meet our needs. We've invested a lot of money in the past, as Kurt explained, so this really leverages those past investments and provides a foundation on which we would build. The second element of the strategy is to expand conservation and water recycling. These are things that are going to be most useful in the future. This does include some stormwater work. So this is how we can meet future increases in demands and helps provide reliability during droughts, which are our primary challenge. The third element of the strategy is to optimize the system, and this is where we look at how can we better capture those surplus supplies, those wet year waters that we do have semi-tropic, but in those really wet years, even semi-tropic can get full in the most extreme conditions. So how can we better leverage capturing wet year supplies for use in droughts? Again, our greatest challenge. Without additional investment, our analysis shows that we currently will be facing water supply shortfalls in the future. The bars on the left represent average water supply conditions, so we have a little bit of a gap between supplies and demands. However, the bars on the right represent the drought conditions, and that really is where we have the big gap that we're trying to fill with our current water supply master plan update. So we've looked at a lot of different projects and different portfolios of projects for filling that gap. Everything from local storage to out-of-county storage to additional recycled water, regional desalination. We're also looking at regional projects that include the Bay Area Regional Desalination Project. Chair Santos mentioned Los Vaqueros Reservoir expansion. We're looking at expanding our current purification center to share that as a regional resource. And there's some other projects that we're looking at. Again, these are all the projects that are being considered to build our, increase the conservation recycling as well as optimize our system and improve its reliability. The Santa Clara Valley Board of Directors is currently looking at what's the right mix of projects and programs, what's our appropriate level of service goal. The higher level of reliability we provide, the more it's going to cost. So that's what the board is currently considering. We'll be discussing that again with the board, scheduled to discuss it again in January. There's also, in addition to just what we can anticipate with costs and benefits and demands, there's a lot of uncertainties. Climate change is one of the big ones. Regulations are a humongous one. The State Water Resources Control Board just adopted a new plan that could potentially impact the water that comes to our county from San Francisco. So there's a lot of unknowns out there. There's a lot of roads that we have to navigate. So an important part of our water supply planning program is to make sure that we have a monitoring and assessment plan or our roadmap for navigating all those changes. The schedule's a little bit out of date, but we are in the process of putting together getting feedback from our board on any updates to the water supply strategy, and then we'll be putting together a draft water supply master plan update 2040 for the board and stakeholders to consider early next year. That's it for my slides. Are there any questions before I turn it over to my colleague?
Let's do this, if you don't mind, please. First of all, I have to go out to do a news conference. Cindy just left, so over water issues about the just recent comment from the State Water Resources Board. But I want to take the time to Cindy and Mr. Wasserman and Mr. Cortese. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. It brings us closer together. The Vice Chair is going to have a motion for our board. There's 4 members left. But your time is valuable. I know we can take care of recreation, potential flooding. There's so many other things together, the homeless and so on, that we all come together, which I know we're all very sensitive will do. Again, I'm going to give over to the Vice Chair. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. On behalf of our Vice Chair, we want to thank you for convening this meeting and hosting us as well, and wish all of you a happy holidays.
So, yeah, so Supervisor Cortese, do you need to leave right this moment? We had one more presentation. Chris, how long?
I can make it quick, or it's only two projects that are a capital improvement program right now. One is the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project, if you'd like to hear about that, or Anderson Dam.
Yeah, well, I have to be back at the county building at 1 o'clock, and we have broken, of course, I have, thanks to the taxpayers, a lot of staff in my office that have broken down the reports already.
Okay,
But I just had,
good.
there was a couple of questions previously, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe in the off-agenda report that I was talking about, any linkage between this presentation and my questions could be referenced or responded to, so I apologize.
And I think we always offer, anytime you or your staff or any elected official staff would like a private one-on-one with our staff, with one of us, we are open to do that, to answer some of your questions. Sometimes, having the ability to have back and forth in a closed session might be a little better than just having a memo sent over to your office, so we extend that offer. If you both need to leave, we appreciate your coming. Again, I'll now entertain a motion from the Board of Directors on the recommendation that the district accept the report on short and long-term strategies to address water supplies, water strategies, and an overview of water conservation conveyance within Santa Clara. Do we have a motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. We already had the opportunity to ask for public comment, so I think that adjourns our meeting. Thank you, staff. Thank you. We're going to adjourn in honor of Susie Wilson. As we mentioned at the top of the meeting, she passed away yesterday. I want to thank district staff. I want to thank county staff, the supervisors for coming, and our directors for coming once more this week. And I know it took a lot for staff to get all of this paperwork out. So our meeting is adjourned until the special meeting with the City of Sunnyvale on Monday, December 17th, 1 o'clock, right here at the headquarters. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for all your work.
Nice to see you.